In the hospital, young Master Thorne, Mrs. Thorne, here is the DNA paternity test report for you and the fetus. The doctor respectfully handed the report to the man before him. He spoke cautiously. According to the report, the DNA match between Mrs. Thorne and the fetus is 100, confirming a maternal relationship. However, the match between Mr. Thorne and the fetus is only 89.999. A paternal relationship cannot be established. Suddenly, the entire consultation room fell silent at the bombshell news. Hope Fairchild stared in stunned disbelief at her husband, who was now holding the report. She could see the veins on his right hand bulging as he gripped the white paper. His hawk-like eyes were fixed on the results, so intense they looked like two sharp blades capable of piercing right through the document. "Ethan," Hope looked at the man in fear, her voice frantic. "This isn't real, Ethan. The baby is yours, it's ours." She had only ever been with one man her entire life, Ethan Thorne. How could she possibly be carrying another man's child? Hope's hands desperately clutched Ethan's right hand, the one holding the report. She explained again and again, "Ethan, you know me. We've been together for so many years, and I've never done anything to betray you. This is our child." Staring at his cold, stone-like profile, Hope's heart hammered in her chest. This man, the more silent he was, the more terrifying he became, until a sharp rip tore through the silence. The DNA report in his hand was torn in two. Only then did Ethan Thorne utter two chilling words. "Abort it, what?" Hope was so shocked that her hands fell from his arm. She didn't dare get any closer. This was already her third pregnancy. The first two times, she had lost the babies before they were even 2 months along. This time, she had finally made it to 6 months. If she had another abortion, Hope couldn't bear to think about it. She backed away in fear, putting distance between herself and the man plotting to murder her child. "No. Ethan, you can't." Hope retreated step by step, her voice trembling. "Ethan, this is your child. You can't do this to our baby." Could it be that a single photograph of her in a hotel, taken before she got pregnant, was enough to make him doubt the baby's paternity? Enough to make him rush to get a DNA test before the child was even born? Hope shook her head, refusing. "I won't. Ethan." In front of her, the man took a single stride in his black suit trousers. He grabbed Hope, who was still backing away. "Don't try to defy me. In our marriage, you have never been the one to call the shots." With that, Ethan clamped down on Hope's arm and began dragging her out of the room. He announced on the spot, "Prepare for surgery now. I, Ethan Thorne, do not raise other men's children. And my woman is certainly not allowed to." "No, Ethan, this really is our baby." Hope clung to the doorframe, refusing to be dragged toward the operating room. She begged, "Ethan, let's do another test." The test must have been wrong. At the mention of a mistake, his chiseled face darkened even further. "Hope, this was the second test. The fact that I was willing to trust you twice was the absolute limit of my tolerance." With a sudden gust of movement, Hope was hoisted onto his shoulder. A retinue of nurses, doctors, and 6 of Ethan's bodyguards in black suits followed close behind, escorting her all the way. "Ethan Thorne," Hope struggled. "It really is our baby, Ethan. You have to believe me, this is our child." Following the doctor's directions, they soon entered a cold delivery room. Ethan threw her onto the abortion table. Hope's shoulders trembled with fear. Before she could collect herself enough to plead again, Ethan and his line of black-suited men turned and left without a backward glance. The next thing she saw was a long, sharp needle plunging into her body. When Hope Fairchild woke up again, she was being carried by Ethan Thorne into the Thorne family estate. "The baby, my baby." The moment she opened her eyes, she frantically felt her stomach. She let out a relieved sigh only when she confirmed her belly was still swollen and not flat. But the man saw her every small movement. "Hope, you really know how to play games. This time it was major bleeding. What trick are you planning for next time?" The man's voice, dark and menacing, came from above her. What was supposed to be an abortion had turned into a hemorrhage mid-procedure. Left with no other choice, the doctors had saved both her and the baby. Hope rested her head on the man's shoulder, but felt not a shred of security or warmth. They had been married for 3 years, but their relationship hadn't deepened with time. Instead, it had grown as cold as an ice cave. Hope knew that if Ethan hadn't been drunk that year and mistaken her for Rosalind Fairchild, he wouldn't have married her. He would have married her older sister, the woman who had been lying in a hospital bed, comatose, for the past 3 years. To him, she, Hope Fairchild, was nothing more than a burden the Thorne family had saddled him with to maintain their public image. He had long wished she would just disappear from his world. In the bedroom, as soon as they were through the door, Ethan roughly tossed the small woman in his arms aside. He sat down on the leather sofa, jutted his firm chin toward the floor, and commanded, "Come here." The air froze at his words. Those 2 simple words were dripping with humiliation and sarcasm. Hope hesitantly touched her belly. She was pregnant right now. The next day, when Hope woke up again, she was alone in the bed. Since they married, they had never spent a full night together. He would always leave immediately after he was finished, his feelings for her completely devoid of affection. "Ma'am, you're awake?" Mrs. P., Eliza Peterson, came in with a glass of milk. Noticing Hope's pale complexion, she said with concern, "Ma'am, you're pregnant now, you must take care of yourself. Please drink the milk when you get up. Breakfast is ready as well." "Okay," Hope replied softly. Mrs. P. was the Thorne family's housekeeper. Ever since she had married into the family, it was always Mrs. P. who looked after her during the countless nights she spent alone, exhausted in both body and soul. After Hope got up and washed, she noticed Mrs. P. was still lingering behind her. "Is something wrong, Mrs. P.?" Hope asked, taking a sip of milk. "Well," Mrs. P. hesitated. "Mr. Thorne said he has business at the company and won't be back for a while. Before he left last night, he instructed that you should rest well, ma'am. He said he hopes to see you fully recovered when he returns in a week so you can proceed with the surgery." Crashed the glass in Hope's hand, slipped and shattered on the floor, milk splashing everywhere. Those last 2 words were like a sharp blade twisting in her already scarred heart. Though the words were as light as paper, they effortlessly drained all the strength from her body. That night, at 2 in the morning, as Hope lay sleeping, the bedroom lights suddenly blazed on. She opened her eyes to see her husband had returned. "Ethan, you're back," all sleepiness vanished. Hope quickly got out of bed to greet him. "Mrs. P. said you had business at the company and would be back in a week. How did you get back so fast?" Before she could finish, a sheet of white paper slapped her across the face. When she looked closely, she saw the bold words printed on it, "Divorce Agreement." Her legs went weak. Her body was already frail from the hemorrhage, and now the sight of the divorce papers seemed to drain the last bit of strength from her. "Ethan, what is this?" "Sign it within 3 days. I'll have my lawyer come pick it up." His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. It was as if this marriage meant nothing to him. Hope refused. "Ethan, I don't want a divorce. The baby is really ours, I swear to you, and what is your oath worth?" Ethan Thorne sneered. He sat down on the sofa right in front of her and lit a cigarette, completely ignoring the child in her womb. Hope took a few steps back, not wanting to inhale too much second-hand smoke that could harm the baby, but she didn't dare voice any objection to him. The man sitting on the sofa, his long legs crossed, had already taken in her every small movement. The disdain and disgust in his eyes deepened. "Hope, do you think I'm divorcing you because of the child? You're far too confident. The doctor said today that Rosalind's condition has improved. Before she wakes up, I don't want her to know that you and I are married. Understand?" So, he was divorcing her just to make his sister happy. He just wanted to sever all ties with her before that comatose woman woke up. Hope felt as if her heart was being pricked by countless tiny needles. Stinging, piercing pain. How could she have forgotten? For all these years, the one Ethan Thorne loved had always been her sister, the woman who had been in a coma for 3 years. He was divorcing her not because of the child, but because he didn't love her. The feeling was one of utter helplessness, of being unable to change a thing. But what saddened her now wasn't this failed marriage, but the fact that his deep affection had never once been for her. For another 2 days, Ethan didn't return. He had left right after giving her the divorce papers that night, not staying over as usual. On the 3rd day, fearing the lawyer would come for the signed agreement, Hope used the excuse of visiting her sister at the hospital to escape for the day. But when she arrived, she discovered that Ethan was there too. "Young Master Thorne, you've been here for 2 nights without sleep. Why don't you go home and rest? We have nurses to take care of her," a doctor in the room advised. Hope, standing at the doorway, felt her heart turn cold. while she, pregnant, waited for her husband to come home for 2 days and 2 nights just to save their marriage, he was here, keeping company with another woman. How pathetic was she? Ethan spoke. I'm not tired. I'll be here with her all week. Well, the doctor was helpless, but we need to give the patient a sponge bath now. Young Master Thorne, perhaps. You could step out for a moment? No need. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. I'll help her. The rest of you can leave. The staff hesitated, but no one dared to defy him. They all had to file out of the room. Hope, seeing them leave, quickly turned away, pretending to be a passerby. Once the doctors were all gone, she cautiously peeked through the crack in the door. Ethan's movements were gentle and light, as if he were touching a priceless, fragile work of art. Hope's heart was lodged in her throat. Rosalind, you're so beautiful. The man's soft, affectionate voice drifted from the room. Hope's vision blurred as she looked in, and saw his body was already pressing down on Rosalind's in that moment. Hope felt as if she had been plunged into an abyss. Countless sharp arrows stabbed into her bleeding heart were pulled out and then stabbed in again, over and over. The pain was so intense she couldn't breathe. It was as if all the air around her had been stolen away, leaving her to suffocate. Thud, she collapsed to the floor. Her body was completely drained of the strength to even stand. Who's there? A sharp, alert voice came from inside the room. The next second, before Hope could scramble up and flee, the door was yanked open from the inside. Hope sat on the floor, looking up at the tall, straight figure of the man looming over her. He stood there like an emperor, radiating a chilling aura. Hope quickly tried to explain, I was just coming to see my sister I didn't expect. I'm sorry, I'll leave right now. As soon as the words were out, she tried to get up. Her body, already weakened by pregnancy and the hemorrhage, was clumsy and uncooperative. She fumbled and fell back to the cold floor several times. In the end, she was only pulled to her feet when Ethan Thorne violently grabbed the back of her collar. Hope, I think you're looking to die? Ethan dragged her into the hospital room by her clothes. He kicked the door shut, locking it. Hope's legs were like jelly. She was completely dependent on him dragging her forward. Ethan, Rip, her clothes were instantly torn to shreds. Hope struggled in terror. Ethan, what are you do? Afterward, Hope lay limply on the floor, completely drained. She clutched her aching stomach, her voice pained. The baby. Ethan, my stomach hurts so much. But Ethan Thorne simply turned and walked to the hospital bed to check on Rosalind, completely ignoring her collapsed on the floor. It was as if, to him, she was just a tool, not a living person. Perhaps even if she bled to death right here, right now, he wouldn't spare her a single glance. Knock, 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 young Master Thorne. Miss Rosalind Fairchild's attending physician is here. He'd like you to come to his office to discuss the patient's current condition. The voice of Ethan's assistant came from outside the door. Before Hope, lying on the floor, could even ask him to get a doctor for her, she saw him striding out of the room. Ethan, Hope couldn't keep up. She practically threw herself on the floor to grab the cuff of his trousers. She pleaded weakly, Ethan, please, I'm begging you, save our child. My stomach hurts so much. With a whoosh of movement, he kicked his leg free, shaking off the hand clutching his trousers. At that moment, he stood tall and imposing, his condescending gaze as cold and merciless as an icy blade. Hope, you're not worthy of carrying my child. His voice was filled with disgust, dripping with contempt for her. It was as if she were some filthy louse, an ant that disgusted him to even look at, let alone touch. Ethan Thorne turned and left the room without a backward glance. That cold, brutal kick seemed to shake loose not only her grip, but also the distance between them and the very life of the child in her womb. Hope lay prostrate on the floor. The constant loss of blood left her with little strength. What she felt was not just physical pain, but a soul-crushing agony and helplessness in her heart. This pain was so profound, it left her unable to shed a single tear. But it was enough to exhaust her body and spirit. Thinking of the poor child in her womb, Hope tried to get up from the floor to find a doctor. The moment she shakily pushed herself up, she saw a pair of eyes on the hospital bed staring directly at her. The gaze was sinister and fierce. There was none of the weakness one would expect from a person in a coma. Instead, she looked remarkably lucid, as if she had been awake for a long time. Sister? Hope, who had just managed to stand, stumbled back 2 steps in shock. It wasn't because Rosalind's awakening meant she and Ethan would be completely over, but because she was truly chilled to the bone by that hate-filled stare. It was almost unbelievable that this person, who hadn't moved a muscle in 3 years, had woken up so suddenly. And the way she looked at her was as terrifying and cold as a ghost. Hope was stunned. It took her a moment to process that Rosalind was truly awake. "Sister, you're awake? What, are you surprised?" Rosalind, lying in bed, gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes, which were clear and cunning. "I've been awake for half a month. For the past 2 weeks, I've felt Ethan by my side every day, feeding me and whispering sweet nothings in my ear at night." Hope was silent. She couldn't believe it. Rosalind had been awake for half a month. "Sister, why didn't you tell Ethan you were awake? Why didn't you tell the doctors?" Rosalind just smiled without answering. But that gentle smile looked more like a dagger hidden behind a flower. "Come here." Lying in bed, she glanced at the call button on the wall and said in a friendly tone, "Little Hope, I can't move right now. Come over and press the button yourself, and a doctor will come in to save you and your child." Hope looked at the call button by the bed. It was only 3 steps away. It felt like a lifeline. If she pressed it, she and her baby could be saved. But though it was only 3 steps, the pain made her stumble with every step. She had to crawl and drag herself to reach the call button. Just then, the comatose woman on the bed suddenly sat up. Her movements were stiff, her expression icy. Dressed in a white hospital gown, she looked as eerie as a female ghost. "Do you know why I didn't tell Ethan I was awake? Because I want him to hate you to his very bones. Even after you're divorced, I want him to kill you with his own hands to make you disappear from his world." From the day Hope was born, Rosalind had despised her half-sister, believing she had destroyed her family. And after Hope married Ethan Thorne, her hatred had festered into an obsession. Rosalind casually pressed the call button on the headboard. Before Hope could process the meaning behind her words, Rosalind grabbed a fruit knife from the bedside table, forced it into Hope's hand, and then, gripping Hope's hand, plunged the knife into her own chest. Blood instantly blossomed across her white hospital gown, a shocking, crimson stain. "Rosalind, what are you doing?" Hope couldn't believe it. She had just woken up and was trying to kill herself again. As the call button blared, doctors and Ethan Thorne burst into the room. And when he saw the woman on the bed covered in blood, Ethan Thorne's eyes instantly blazed with fury. "Hope, you dare to lay a hand on her? Are you trying to die?" He strode forward, his large hand showing no mercy as it clamped around Hope's neck. With one hand controlling her slender neck, he lifted her entire limp body off the floor. No. Hope was already weak from blood loss. Now she felt like she was suffocating. If it weren't for the child in her womb, she might not have held on this long. "I didn't." Ethan, cough, cough. It was her. She tried to kill herself. Hope tried to struggle in fear, but the tight grip on her throat cut off her air, leaving her in muffled, powerless pain. Her delicate throat felt like it was about to snap. Ethan's face darkened. "You dare to frame a comatose woman. Hope, I want you to pay with your life." His hand tightened brutally, and Hope's head lolled to the side as her breath gave out. She hung there like a rag doll with no bones, her only point of support the hand crushing her neck. When Hope woke up, she was lying in a hospital bed, feeling as weak and listless as if all the blood had been drained from her body. "Water!" The moment she opened her mouth, she felt a sharp pain in her neck, as if a rope had been tied in a tight knot around it. Even speaking hurt. "Ma'am, you're awake." Mrs. P quickly poured a glass of warm water and brought it to her. "Ma'am, the doctor said you have a closed trauma to your larynx. You need to rest and speak as little as possible. It will heal in a few days." Hope took a sip of water and then suddenly remembered the baby in her belly. She quickly reached down to feel her stomach. Seeing that it was still swollen, she finally felt a wave of relief. For her, the only thing keeping her going now was this little life inside her. She had already miscarried twice. If she lost this one, she might never be able to conceive again. Hope didn't dare to be careless for a single moment. Knock, knock, knock. A knock came from outside the room, and then the door was opened. 5 police officers in black uniforms entered. "Miss Fairchild, you have been reported for suspected intentional homicide. We need to take you to the detention center for a thorough investigation of this case." The 5 officers walked to the bedside, surrounding Hope. Lying in bed, Hope was completely dumbfounded. Suspected, intentional homicide, detention center. She sat up in fear, her voice hoarse and urgent. I didn't kill anyone, it was her. Rosalind Fairchild tried to kill herself. Miss Fairchild, according to the hospital's medical report on Rosalind Fairchild, she has been in a vegetative state for 3 years with no signs of waking up. Also, an officer took out a sealed evidence bag containing a fruit knife. He pointed to it and said, "Based on this murder weapon, the fingerprints on the knife are yours. Considering the physical evidence and the patient's condition, Miss Fairchild, you are the murderer. Please come with us to the detention center to await sentencing." "No, please." Hope shrank back under the covers in fear, murmuring, "I didn't kill anyone. I really didn't, Mrs. P. You know, I'm not that kind of person, right? I would never kill anyone, right?" Hope grabbed onto the older woman, her voice raspy. Still reeling from the physical and emotional trauma, she was now on the verge of a complete breakdown. Mrs. P looked conflicted. She wanted to believe Hope, but Rosalind had never woken up. It was hard for anyone to believe. "Ma'am, just go with the police. They'll figure it out once the investigation is complete," Mrs. P advised gently. Hope shook her head. Ethan doubted her, and now Mrs. P doubted her too. She really hadn't done it. What could she do to make them believe her? Hope asked with a trembling voice, "How long will the investigation take?" "A case like yours, Miss Fairchild, requires 5 to 6 months of detention before a verdict can be reached." 5 to 6 months. What about the baby in her belly? She was due in 3 months. She didn't want her child to suffer in a detention center while she was pregnant, and she certainly didn't want her child to be born in a place like that. "No, I can't." An officer glanced at the IV drip in the back of Hope's hand and warned, "Miss Fairchild, we'll give you 1 hour to finish your infusion. After that, you must come with us." With that, the 5 officers left the room and stood guard at the door. Hope lay in bed, feeling as if her world had gone completely dark. No one believed her, and now she had to bear the blame for a crime she didn't commit. She painfully stroked her belly. Since the beginning of her pregnancy, she hadn't given this child a single day of peace, and it was still the same now. Mrs. P, sitting beside her, wiped away tears. "Ma'am, if you go in, you have to take good care of yourself. You're still so frail, and there's not much to eat in there. You must with the baby." "Mrs. P, where's Ethan?" Hope clung to a sliver of hope. "Can you ask Ethan to help me, just for our child's sake? Even if it's just delaying for 3 months, until after the baby is born. I'll go to the detention center and cooperate with the investigation then. Mrs. P, can you ask him to see me?" "Well," Mrs. P looked troubled. "Ma'am, it was Mr. Thorne who called the police." Hope fell silent. Her heart felt like it was being buried under layers of ice and snow. For Rosalind's sake, was Ethan Thorne really going to disregard their 3 years of marriage and personally send her to prison? Suddenly, Hope felt pathetic, pitiable, and utterly ridiculous. "Mrs. P, I'm hungry. Could you go buy me a bowl of noodles from that cart on Harbor Street? I'm afraid I won't get to eat it again." Hope stared blankly into space. Mrs. P's eyes filled with tears. Of course. Ma'am, you wait here, I'll go right now." After Mrs. P left, Hope gritted her teeth and ripped the IV needle from the back of her hand. She braced herself against the wall and made her way to the window. She would not go to the detention center, and she would not let her child suffer for this. She pushed her fragile, battered body toward the window. Fortunately, the room was on the 3rd floor, and outside was an empty, secluded area. Hope tied her bedsheets into a knot around the window guardrail and, protecting her belly, painstakingly climbed down to the 1st floor. Without any sense of direction, she ran like a headless chicken toward the most deserted area she could find. She had to take her child and run far, far away. She had to leave this place, leave the man who was trying to send her to prison with his own hands screeched suddenly. A gust of wind whipped past her. The next thing she saw was a black Porsche pulling up right in front of her. "Hope, you dare to run?" A familiar voice, like that of a demon from hell, cut through the air. His presence was like that of a king holding the power of life and death, capable of condemning anyone to their doom. "Ethan!" Hope looked at him in terror. "I won't go to the detention center." "Ethan, I didn't kill anyone, I swear I never touched her." "Hope, what I despise most is your pretentious act. Come back with me and turn yourself in." "No, Ethan, I really didn't kill her. She told me herself that she'd been awake for half a month. She grabbed my hand and stabbed herself," Hope explained desperately. How she wished he would believe her just this once, even for a single moment. "Hope, How venomous can you be? To slander a woman in a coma, Ethan grabbed Hope and shoved her into the car. The Porsche shot forward like a black stallion. Every second that passed seemed to shorten the distance to the detention center. Sitting in the passenger seat, Hope was trembling, her body ice cold. If I agree to the divorce, to let you and my sister be together, will you let me go? Hope, you're in no position to bargain with me whether you agree to this divorce or not. It's happening. He irritably loosened the tie around his neck. They were supposed to get a divorce anyway, so why did it feel like she, Hope Fairchild, was the one in control of the marriage now that she had agreed? The Porsche sped on, but its final destination was the Thorne estate. Just as Hope was secretly relieved to have escaped her fate, she was taken to the Thorne family's perpetually dark basement. Legend had it that this place was once a water dungeon. In his ancestors' time, it was used to hold enemies of the Thorne family. Many had lost their lives in this dungeon, their disappearances leaving no trace for the outside world to find. Ethan, what are you going to do? Hope's legs felt weak. Was he going to treat her the way his ancestors treated their enemies? Lock her up. She's only allowed out for 3 meals a day. Keep her locked up at all other times. With a wave of Ethan Thorne's hand, 4 bodyguards in black suits moved forward to seize her. But this wasn't just being locked in a basement. They were throwing her into the water dungeon. Ethan, what are you doing? Hope was forcibly dragged into the water by several bodyguards. In the center of the water was a cage, about 2 meters wide. Standing in the water, the surface reached right up to her neck. The icy water made her shiver uncontrollably. Let me go, Ethan. What are you doing? I didn't kill Rosalind. Why are you doing this to me? Hope, you won't escape a single bit of the punishment you deserve. Ethan Thorne gave the order. Lock the gate? Yes, young Master Thorne. The men in black guarding the entrance locked the water dungeon's gate and retreated from the water. No matter how much Hope explained or begged for help, Ethan Thorne walked away without a single backward glance. Hope leaned against the cold bars of the water dungeon, her body and spirit utterly exhausted. His heartlessness and cruelty felt colder than the icy water, plunging her into a bottomless abyss. One day later, at lunchtime, Hope was released from the water dungeon again. She was completely motionless. After being submerged in water for a whole day, she was now so cold that she didn't even have the strength to shiver. She was practically carried out of the water dungeon like a limp doll. If not for the faint breath she still drew, her vacant eyes would have suggested she had already left this world. Ethan Thorne, who had just entered, happened to witness this scene. His heart instinctively clenched, as if squeezed by an invisible hand. He strode forward and placed his long index finger under Hope's nose for a few seconds. Only when he felt her faint breath did the hand around his heart seem to loosen its grip. Then, his expression shifted to one of utter disgust. Hope stopped being so melodramatic, stop using that hypocritical act to gain sympathy. His eyes were filled with contempt for her. Hope was laid on the ground. Her heart felt no pain, only a chilling coldness. Even now, he thought she was trying to get his sympathy. In his eyes, Hope Fairchild must be made of iron. She should have been fine after a major hemorrhage, articulate after being choked, and full of life after being submerged in cold water for a day and a night. Hope turned her head, and a single tear slipped from the corner of her eye. She offered no explanation, but the tear betrayed her stubborn facade. Ethan Thorne glanced at her scornfully, then turned to the 5 doctors in white coats who had followed him in. You can begin the surgery. What? Hope, who had been expressionless just a moment before, instantly clutched her belly and struggled to sit up. No, none of you are to touch my child. No one is going to kill my baby. Her hoarse voice was full of accusation, as if speaking another word would tear her throat apart. The weakened Hope tried to get up several times, but kept falling. Finally, she sat on the floor and scooted backward. She could accept any punishment from Ethan, but she could never accept losing her child. Take her to the operating room. The man before her stood tall, his merciless words like a final judgment. The 5 doctors closed in. This time, no bodyguards were needed. Hope was easily lifted and carried into the prepared operating room. Let me go, Ethan Thorne. Let me go. On the operating table, Hope struggled with every last bit of her strength. Tears streamed down her pale face. Ethan, I'm begging you. Spare the baby, just let the baby be born, please. I'll do anything you ask. If you just let the baby be born, I'll even go to the detention center." Her heart-wrenching cries were weak and feeble, as if she were using all her energy to plead for the child in her womb. "Hope, we don't need a child between us." He stood before the operating table, his voice cold and cruel. "Begin." Yes, young Master Thorne, they didn't even give her anesthesia. The surgical instruments moved without mercy. Soon, blood stained the entire operating table. When Hope saw the baby's tiny head emerge, she was so overwhelmed with despair she could barely breathe. "Ethan Thorne, I hate you. I will never, ever forgive you in this lifetime." When Hope woke up again, she was once more in a hospital room. She subconsciously reached for her stomach, only to find it completely flat. Gone. The baby was gone. Her despair was so profound that even her tears were calm and still. Her eyes were empty, lifeless. She didn't even sob as she cried, like someone on the verge of death, utterly hopeless. "Dr. Young Master Thorne, she's awake. Mrs. P cried out joyfully, wiping tears from her face. "Ma'am, you've been in a coma for 3 days. You had another hemorrhage. You almost didn't make it." Hope lay motionless in the bed, her face a blank mask. If she had known the baby was gone, she would have preferred to stay in that coma forever, to never wake up, to never know this cruel reality. Suddenly, a familiar face she hadn't seen in years came into view. Miles Carter, dressed in a white doctor's coat, stood by her bed, anxiously performing another full checkup. "Hopeie, you're finally awake." Miles had been Hope's senior in university. He had pursued her since her freshman year, only letting go when she got married. But they hadn't seen each other in 3 years, and now Hope was covered in scars. Miles's large hand gently wiped the tears from Hope's face. His palm was as warm as she remembered, like a shield that could protect her from everything. Hope's gaze finally showed a flicker of life. Looking at Miles, she finally let down her armor, her exhaustion showing. "Miles, I regret it." She regretted marrying Ethan Thorne. She regretted not accepting Miles's proposal back then. She regretted rejecting him. "Hope, what do you regret?" In an instant, a furious voice erupted. The other man in the room stormed over to Hope's side, his hand punishingly gripping her face, punishing her for letting another man touch her. His terrifying eyes looked like they could eat her alive. Ethan Thorne let her go, but Ethan wasn't the only one enraged. Miles, standing nearby, was just as furious. Seeing Ethan squeeze Hope's paper-white face until it turned red, Miles threw a punch. "I said, let her go." Ethan stumbled back 2 steps from the blow, his dark eyes instantly blazing. He lunged forward and grabbed Miles by the collar of his white coat. "Let her go? Hope Fairchild is my wife. You're the one who should let go." Thwack! A heavy fist landed squarely on Miles's face. Blood immediately seeped from the corner of his mouth. Not to be outdone, Miles swung back with a punch of his own. "If I had known marrying you would cause her this much pain, I, Miles Carter, would have died before I let her go back then." He had respected Hope's choice to be with the man she loved. But all it had brought her was a body full of wounds. "Ethan Thorne, if Hopeie were my wife, I wouldn't let her be lying here, her life in danger at any moment. This punch is for her, to teach you a lesson." With that, the 2 men in the room descended into a brawl. The sounds of crashing and banging filled the room, disturbing Hope's thoughts, but she had no intention of stopping them. She just buried her head under the covers, wanting to shut out the world. Silence returned 15 minutes later. A swarm of doctors had rushed in and separated the 2 men. Miles was led away, leaving only Ethan in the room. The covers were suddenly ripped off Hope. She was met with Ethan's ferocious, beast-like eyes boring into her. "Hope, you shameless woman, are you that desperate for affection? How dare you let a man other than me touch you?" In a few swift motions, he tore her thin hospital gown to shreds. Lying on the bed, Hope didn't struggle at all. Without her child, no pain, no matter how great, felt like pain anymore. The fragile Hope lost consciousness once again. To keep her away from Miles, she was sent back to that dark, sunless basement. She stayed there for 10 days, like an outcast abandoned by the world. Besides the meals placed on the table at regular times, no one came to see her. There was no sunlight. Her life was like that of a prisoner in hell, bleak and lightless. Until one day, Rosalind Fairchild appeared before her, dressed in a white dress, her face wreathed in a gentle smile, showing no signs of weakness from her suicide attempt. "My dear sister, how have you been? I imagine this place is much more pleasant than the detention center." Rosalind walked up to Hope, who was huddled in a corner, her posture arrogant. Hope leaned against the wall. The intense pressure and pain of the past few days had gradually pushed her into depression. She couldn't hear any words, nor did she say any. Rosalind sneered, squatting down beside Hope. "Little Hope, I brought you a gift today. Guess what it is? It has something to do with that child of yours." Hope's lifeless eyes instantly flickered with a spark of light, bright and scorching. She turned her head to look at Rosalind. Rosalind took a stack of photos from her bag and fanned them out in front of Hope. "Little Hope, do you recognize the baby in these pictures? It's your dead child. Look, so small, so pitiful. But what's even more pitiful is, I'm going to have this little darling's remains used in an occult ritual, so your child can never find peace, so it can never come into this world." Before she could finish, Hope lunged and tackled her to the ground. She wrapped her hands around Rosalind's neck, squeezing with all her might. "Rosalind, I'll kill you, I'll kill you." Hope's eyes were bloodshot. She wished she could snap the neck in her hands that very second. "Rosalind, didn't you say you wanted to die? Didn't you want me to kill you? I'm going to strangle you right now. I'll make sure you can never find peace. I'll make sure you can never come into this world." Bang, the basement door was thrown open. A furious roar preceded the person's arrival. "Hope, what are you doing?" Ethan Thorne yanked her up and threw her into the icy water dungeon. "Hope, I see you're completely unrepentant this time. I won't be lenient." Ethan Thorne's idea of not being lenient was to send her directly to prison to be sentenced. Unlike the last time, when Hope had struggled and tried to escape, this time she offered no resistance at all, letting them do as they pleased. To her, it seemed like just a change of scenery from a water dungeon to a prison cell. There wasn't much difference. At the Thorne estate, in the study, "Young Master Thorne, this is the divorce agreement Mrs. Thorne signed in prison. The people there asked me to deliver it to you." A single sheet of paper was placed on Ethan's desk. The neat handwriting looked as if it were the result of a solemn, well-considered decision. Each stroke was clear, to the point of being heartless. For some reason, his heart felt heavy, as if it had been struck by something. Wasn't this what he had wanted all along? To end their marriage and completely kick her out of his world. So why, upon seeing this divorce agreement, did he not feel the expected sense of relief? "Young Master Thorne, the private doctor you sent to the prison said that Mrs. Thorne is now suffering from—" "Shut up from now on. Her affairs have nothing to do with me." Ethan cut him off coldly and shoved the offensive divorce agreement into a drawer. "You are not to mention her again, and you are certainly not to call her Mrs. Thorne." "Yes, young Master Thorne." Ethan got up and went back to the bedroom. Hope was gone, but all her things remained in this house. Looking at her clothes, the bed they had slept in, even the sofa they had sat on, his mind couldn't help but replay memories of those times. "Get all of this stuff out of here." Ethan waved his hand dismissively. He started pushing over the coffee table, the sofa. "I don't want a single thing of hers left. Replace everything with things Rosalind likes." Yes, young Master Thorne." The Thorne estate was completely redecorated. Even the walls were repainted, but it still couldn't erase the scent of Hope. For the entire month, Ethan avoided the house as if it were the plague, staying at the office every day without returning once. Until one night, around midnight, he drove drunk straight to the prison. The first thing he yelled was, "I want to see Hope Fairchild. Hope, get out here. Young Master Thorne, what are you doing here?" A prison guard helped support the staggering Ethan, who was too drunk to stand straight. He was clutching the month-old divorce agreement, roaring like a crazed beast. "Hope you get out here. Who gave you the nerve to sign this? Now you appear before me right now. Young Master Thorne, Miss Fairchild. She died in prison a month ago." The guard asked tentatively, "Young Master Thorne, you didn't know?" In an instant, Ethan's throat felt as if it were blocked by needles. He couldn't utter a single word. Dead, he didn't know. He was the one who said her affairs had nothing to do with him. He was the one who forbade anyone from mentioning her. His assistant had tried to bring it up several times, but he had shut him down. And now, Hope had been dead for a month. He was only finding out now. He hadn't even seen her one last time. The guard brought over an urn. "Young Master Thorne, Miss Fairchild committed suicide by slitting her wrists the same day she signed the divorce papers. After her death, we couldn't contact her family, nor could we reach you. Her body was kept at the funeral home for 3 days before we had to have her cremated. These are Miss Fairchild's ashes, do you?" The guard looked at the man's rapidly changing expression and didn't dare to say another word. Ethan took the heavy urn. It felt like the lightest thing in the world, yet it was the heaviest burden he had ever carried, as if it had drained him of all his strength. 2 years later, the cemetery. The early morning sky was a dreary, oppressive gray, just as it had been on the day Hope was buried. The people who had hurt her stood before her grave. The doctors who had performed the induced abortion were all kneeling. Every year on the anniversary of Hope's death, Ethan Thorne would make these people kneel before her grave and atone for their sins. Ethan leaned down and took a dark blue handkerchief from his suit pocket to wipe her headstone. His rough thumb lovingly caressed the black and white photograph on the stone. It was the pure, radiant smile she had worn when she married him, full of happiness and sweetness. But the 3 years of marriage he had given her were anything but happy. In the past 2 years, he had often replayed their time together, but he couldn't recall a single instance of Hope smiling during their marriage. All he seemed to have given her were tears and pain. Even her final moments were spent in prison. "Wife, I'm sorry." He brushed his fingers over her happy face in the photograph, his eyes as cold as frost. During their marriage, he had never called her by such an intimate name. It was always her full name, devoid of any husbandly affection. "Wife, are you punishing me? Punishing me for all the suffering I put you through during those 3 years by my side?" Ethan sat before the grave, looking as if he had lost his soul. 2 years ago, he had thought Hope's death was just another trick to escape him, until the hospital's DNA confirmation and the prison surveillance footage of her emotionlessly slitting her wrists. The memory still sent a dull ache through his heart. "Young Master Thorne, it's starting to rain. We should go back," his assistant reminded him, holding an umbrella. Ethan stared at the grave, silent. He stood up, took the black umbrella from his assistant, and held it over Hope's headstone. He remembered that in her final days, Hope was either bleeding heavily or suffering from the cold in the water dungeon. She had a fever day and night. The private doctor he had sent once told him that Hope had been diagnosed with depression when she was sent to prison. Her depression was his fault, wasn't it? "Wife, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." He wrapped his large hands around the hard, cold headstone, pressing his forehead against it in deep remorse. He used to think Hope was strong enough to withstand any setback. Only now did he realize how cruel he had been. If he could, he wished he could do it all over again. "Young Master Thorne, the little princess is crying in the car, asking for you. We can't calm her down. She says she misses you, and I think she's running a fever." Someone from outside the cemetery hurried in to report. Ethan glanced at the headstone, leaned in, and placed a gentle kiss on the cold stone. Only then did he turn and leave with his entourage. In the car. The moment Ethan opened the car door, he was met with the sound of a child's wailing. Mrs. P was holding the child, trying to soothe her, but today the child was unusually fussy. She had been crying since they arrived, and after finally being comforted, she had started up again. Ethan sat down and took the little 2-year-old girl into his arms. Her big, bright, dark eyes were the spitting image of Hope's, capable of stirring pity in anyone's heart. "Annette, be good. Why are you crying?" He sat the little girl on his lap and gently touched her smooth forehead. It was a bit warm. This was the only hope Hope had left him. But after being born prematurely at just over 6 months, the child's health had always been poor. Not only did she get fevers frequently, but due to a congenital defect, she still couldn't walk. She could only stand for a short while before her legs gave out. They were completely weak. "Daddy? Annette misses Mommy too." Little Annette cried and fussed in Ethan's arms. Normally, Ethan rarely mentioned Hope in front of the child. After all, their memories together were never pleasant. But Annette was endlessly curious about the mother she never knew. Every time she brought up Hope, it felt like reopening that old, broken memory. Little Annette had a fever again. Her constitution had been weak since birth. Sometimes even a slight chill could make her sick for a long time. And over the years, Ethan had been nothing but doting on this child. Looking at her face, a miniature version of Hope's, he cherished and spoiled her excessively. In the hospital, Annette Thorne's small body lay on the hospital bed, a drip attached to her frail little hand. Because she was so often ill, Ethan had rented a VIP hospital room for her long term. Little Annette spent more than half of every month in the hospital. "Daddy, it's bitter. Annette doesn't want medicine." The little girl whimpered, clutching a small white bunny pillow. Her big, sparkling eyes were fixed on Ethan's face with a childish plea. Those eyes were so similar to Hope's. Even the pleading look in them was identical to the way Hope had begged him to spare her, time and time again. If he had spared her back then, at least she wouldn't be gone now, would she? How will you get better if you don't take your medicine, Annette? Ethan's large hand gently stroked the child's palm-sized face. He took a lollipop from the drawer and said softly, "How about this? You take a sip of medicine, and then we'll have a lick of the candy. That way, it won't be bitter." The little girl's tongue darted out to lick her pink lips, her eyes glued to the lollipop. But she showed no signs of being persuaded. She pouted and mumbled, "Annette only wants candy, no medicine. Medicine is bitter." Ethan, sitting beside her, was at a loss. The little girl was stubborn and proud. Having been spoiled by Ethan since birth, she didn't listen to anyone, including him. Mrs. P, standing nearby, suggested, "Sir, why don't I add some more water to dilute the medicine for the little princess? That might make it less bitter." "Okay," Ethan replied softly and handed the bowl to Mrs. P. The little girl, leaning against the headboard, was surprisingly quick. The moment Ethan was distracted, her small hand shot out and snatched the lollipop from his grasp. She then popped it into her mouth with great satisfaction. She seemed completely unaware that she had stolen it, her eyes showing no fear as she looked at her father. Ethan's lips thinned. Though he didn't look pleased, he could never bring himself to be harsh with this child. He just reminded her patiently, "Don't eat too much. You have to brush your teeth after you finish the candy." Knock, knock, knock. A knock came from the open door of the hospital room. His assistant entered and said, "Young Master Thorne, the medical company that Thorne Industries previously invested in has scheduled the contract signing for this afternoon. Will you be staying at the hospital with the little princess, or will you go to the signing?" Because of Annette's poor health over the past 2 years, Ethan had taken a keen interest in hospitals and medical technology, investing and donating a significant amount of money in the field. "The signing this afternoon is fine. Mrs. P, you'll stay with Annette. Call me immediately if anything happens." His large hand lovingly squeezed the child's soft cheek. He then made sure the little girl took her medicine, brushed her teeth, and saw her lie down to sleep before he finally felt at ease enough to leave. Over the years, perhaps out of his immense debt and guilt toward Hope, Ethan had poured all that remorse and fatherly love, with interest, onto their child, as if trying to alleviate the burden on his heart. 2 years ago, if this child hadn't appeared during his darkest time, he, Ethan Thorne, might still be living as madly as he had when he first learned of Hope's death. The medical project negotiation had just concluded, and the developer was bringing over the contract when an unexpected guest arrived in the conference room. "Young Master Thorne, this is Mr. Carter, a shareholder in this project and at People's Hospital. Once we sign the contract, Mr. Carter will be joining us in this medical venture and in future investments in medical equipment. I hope we can all work together for a successful future," the developer said, fawning over them. These two were titans of the business world. In the past, Ethan Thorne had focused on real estate, entertainment, and media. But in the last 2 years, he had pivoted to the medical industry, making them desperate to secure this tycoon. After all, based on any company's past profits, anything Ethan Thorne set his sights on was a guaranteed success. "Heh!" Ethan Thorne, sitting at the head of the table, lifted his eyelids and his gaze met Miles Carter's as he entered the room. His dark eyes narrowed, his expression souring. Seeing this, the developer broke out in a cold sweat. Miles's appearance was like a lit fuse, instantly igniting the tension in the room. "Mr. Thorne, it's been a long time." Miles stood beside Ethan, speaking first. Ethan sneered. "I'm not familiar with Mr. Carter. What's there to see or not see?" "Not seeing you would be for the best." Slap with a thud, the contract in his hand was slammed onto the conference table. The gesture was so forceful it seemed he was about to discard the contract altogether. The developer's heart leaped into his throat. They had gone to great lengths to get Ethan Thorne on board for this project. He quickly tried to smooth things over. "Young Master Thorne, Mr. Carter has invested a lot of time into this project, helping our company turn a profit from a loss. It's been a huge turnaround if you also invest. Young Master Thorne, I'm confident that with you and Mr. Carter, the company will achieve even greater success." Ethan's voice was cold. I have high standards for the people I work with, especially for certain third parties who once tried to interfere in my and my wife's life. That is something I cannot tolerate. Ethan stood up, his eyes level with Miles's. An invisible aura of hostility crackled between them. Their gazes were filled with enmity. I didn't realize that after so many years, Mr. Thorne still holds on to the past, Miles said with a cold taunt. But a woman Mr. Thorne doesn't cherish. If she's fancied by someone else, there will naturally be a man willing to cherish her for him. Thwack, the words were barely out of his mouth when Ethan grabbed Miles by the collar and landed a heavy punch on his face. I won't have you insult her, and whether anyone fancies her or not, Hope Fairchild is my wife. In life she is mine, in death she is my ghost. It's not your place, Miles Carter, to cherish her. Miles stumbled back 2 steps from the punch. But this time, unlike their first meeting where they had fought tooth and nail, Miles had no intention of fighting back. Instead of anger, he asked, "And did you ever cherish her, Mr. Thorne? Even a little? Did you ever care for her or love her for a single moment? Or is your idea of cherishing someone to personally send them to their grave?" "Miles, I think you're looking to die. It's not your place to lecture me about Hope's affairs." Ethan moved to strike again. Over the years, the most sensitive topic for him had been Hope. Anything related to her, especially mentions of the past, would cause him to lose control, making him irritable and violent. And this time, the one bringing up the past was Miles Carter. Just seeing Miles made him remember what Hope had said in front of him 2 years ago, about her regrets. Although she hadn't specified what she regretted, he could guess from the empty, helpless, and near-despairing look in her eyes as she lay in that hospital bed. She, Hope Fairchild, she must have hated him. Crash! Suddenly, the sharp sound of a coffee cup shattering came from the conference room doorway. Hope dropped to the ground in terror, ducking her head low. She had never imagined they would meet again. Back then, she thought she would die. But after the induced abortion, after Ethan and Miles had their fight, Miles had followed her all the way to her imprisonment. When Hope attempted suicide that day and was rushed to the hospital, it was Miles who saved her. When she woke up again, she had tearfully told Miles about that agonizing time, wanting to end her miserable past. In the end, it was Miles who had relented, handling everything to help her disappear from Ethan Thorne's world. But 2 short years had not been enough time for her to mend her broken past, and now she had met Ethan again. "The contract is canceled." Ethan kicked a chair out of his way and strode toward the conference room door. The developer heard this and hurried after him. "But, young Master Thorne, you can't do that. We agreed to sign the contract today. How can you cancel? We had an agreement." Hope saw the group of people walking toward her. She quickly bowed her head, pretending to pick up the broken shards from the floor. Hiss! But the more flustered she was, the clumsier she became. A sharp piece sliced her finger. A drop of blood instantly fell onto the conference room carpet. "Hess!" Ethan didn't stop. He glanced at the blood on the floor and said, "The staff here are so clumsy they can't even carry a cup of coffee. How can we trust you as developers? The signing is canceled." With that, he walked out of the conference room without a backward glance. But after leaving, he felt an unusual agitation in his heart. It was as if something was about to happen. Perhaps Miles's words had stirred up the past, making him recall his marriage to Hope. He tried to search through those 3 years for any shred of evidence that he had ever cherished her, or even cared for her, but all he could remember was the pain he had inflicted. And her soft-spoken pleas, her lowered gaze, her constant concessions, and her strength. And yet, he had always taken her strength for granted, thinking she was an indestructible cockroach, that no amount of pain could truly hurt her. That must be why his cruelty toward her had only escalated. In the conference room, not long after Ethan left, Miles rushed forward to help the small woman, still squatting on the floor, to her feet. He lifted her injured, slender index finger to his mouth. Even though Ethan had been gone for a while, Hope's heart was still pounding, and her shoulders were trembling uncontrollably. Her mind was flooded with images from 2 years ago. She saw his cruelty toward her because of Rosalind and her own near-death experience, submerged in the icy water dungeon for a day and a night. Then the cold operating table, watching helplessly as her child was taken from her, and the photos of the dead fetus. The memories made her whole body tremble with fear. "Hopi." Miles pulled her into his arms, his voice soft and soothing. "It's okay, it's all in the past, it's all over now." Besides, didn't we come back to the country to treat your depression? If we really want to get better, we have to start by facing and accepting it, right? His large hand gently patted Hope's back, trying to calm her panic. 2 years ago, after the trauma of the induced abortion, Hope had developed mild depression. Then, facing Rosalind, seeing the photos of the dead fetus, and being sent to prison, all of it had pushed her deeper into depression. Although it had eased over the past 2 years, the nightmares of the past haunted her every night, impossible to forget. Hope's voice trembled. "You knew, didn't you? You knew he was the investor today, so you deliberately had me come to the conference room." Miles's hand on her back stiffened for a moment. Yes, he knew, and he had arranged it deliberately, but it was all to help Hope face her past. At the very least, the root of her depression was Ethan Thorne and that child. "Yes, I knew. I'm sorry, Hope, I didn't tell you beforehand. You know I don't want to see him." Hope's emotions began to spiral. "Miles, why are you forcing me? I don't want to see him, no. I have to go back. I'm going back to Zurich right now. I have to go back." As she spoke, Hope started to dash around frantically, as if someone were chasing her, desperate to disappear from this city immediately. "Hope, calm down." Miles's tone grew stern. He lifted the sleeve of her wrist, revealing the glaring scars, one after another, stark and prominent against her fair skin. "Hope, look at yourself. Look what you've done to yourself over the past 2 years because of him. I don't want to see you using self-harm to cope with your pain anymore. And I certainly don't want to see you having suicidal thoughts like you did 2 years ago." This time, if it weren't to cure Hope's depression, he, Miles Carter, would never have wanted them to meet again. He had spent over 6 months persuading Hope to even agree to return to the country. Hope stared blankly at the scars on her wrist, new and old, scattered in different places. Since her depression had set in, her appetite had dwindled. She often ate only one meal a day, leaving her rail thin. Her slender arms, covered in scars, looked exceptionally fragile. To Miles, the scars on her arms were like cuts on his own heart. Every time he came home from work, Hope would have a new surprise for him in the form of a fresh wound. It had gotten to the point where he had to take her with him even when he was working, terrified that the little woman would have another accident while he was away. Sometimes, she would wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare and might try to hurt herself in the bathroom. He couldn't begin to describe how devastating those moments were. Now, because her condition showed no signs of improving, Miles wanted to try and open that initial wound in her heart to help her face Ethan Thorne calmly. Perhaps then, everything could go back to normal. Hope bit her lip. She knew she had been too much trouble for Miles these past 2 years. She had even caused him to neglect his work, occupying his every waking moment because he was afraid she would repeat the suicide attempt from prison. Hope said guiltily, "I'm sorry, Miles. For always making you worry about me. I'm so sorry. I've never blamed you." Miles smoothed Hope's messy hair. "We'll take it one step at a time. You have to learn to be calm to return to a normal life. Let's start by staying in the city, okay?" His low, gentle voice was coaxing and careful, as if a single wrong word could hurt her. Hope pressed her lips together, her eyes still filled with hesitation. Her face was clouded with worry. "But if we stay here, what if? What if Ethan Thorne finds out? What if he finds out I'm still alive? Will he call the police and send me back to prison? Or will he throw me back in that water dungeon?" It was so cold. "I don't want to go back there. And my baby, did Rosalind really have the remains used in that occult ritual? My baby. My baby, no. I have to find her. I have to save my baby. I can't let her take my baby. I have to find her. I have to find her." As she spoke, Hope started muttering to herself, about to walk out of the conference room. Even though 2 years had passed, whenever she felt down or her depression flared up, her memory would regress to 2 years ago. The memories from that time were still crystal clear, not a single detail forgotten. "No, Hope, calm down. Rosalind was lying to you. Those photos were fake and I'm here now. There are no police, no prison, no water dungeon, and no occult ritual. I promise. What happened 2 years ago will never happen again, Hope. Let's go home and rest first. You're tired now." Miles grabbed the little woman who was about to run off, terrified she would disappear again. During their 2 years in Zurich, Hope had been in an unfamiliar place. Whenever she thought about the child she had lost, she would run away from home, saying she had to find the baby and bury it properly. A few times, Miles had searched for 3 days and nights without finding her, finally locating her at a children's playground where she would follow newborns around for hours. He had lost count of the number of times she had gone missing, and he had to file a police report. Now he wished he could tie her to him with a rope, afraid that if he blinked, she would vanish from his sight. At midnight, Ethan Thorne returned to the Thorne estate, dead drunk. He rarely came back these past years, not only because the house was filled with Hope's presence, which made him feel even more guilt and remorse, but also because little Annette was often in the hospital. He was constantly worried and would rush to be by her side as soon as he finished work. But today, in a drunken haze, he had driven straight to the estate. The lecturing tone in Miles's words from the afternoon still echoed in his mind. Now, whenever he thought about it, he wished he could just kill himself. How could he have been so heartless and cruel back then? Hope, Hope. As soon as Ethan entered the house, he stumbled upstairs to the bedroom they had once shared. He had heard from Mrs. P that Hope used to wait for him in the bedroom every night, no matter how late, until she was overcome with sleepiness and drifted off. Sometimes, she would even wait all night on the living room sofa, just for a chance to see him. For over 1,000 nights, he had left her to sleep alone. And yet, he had still used the harshest words to call her hypocritical and pretentious. Even when he did come back, he never stayed the night. Her heart must have been scarred from that time on. She, Hope Fairchild, must have been completely disappointed in him. "Hope, I was wrong. Will you come back, Hope?" He pushed open the door and collapsed onto the table where Hope's memorial tablet was displayed. In one hand, he held a bottle of strong liquor. With the other, he gently stroked the dark wooden tablet, the pain in his eyes spreading like a pool of ink. He took a large swig. He mumbled remorsefully, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Come back, and we'll start over. I'll make it up to you. I'll go in the water dungeon, I'll go to prison, I'll do whatever you want. Hope, come back, Ethan." Rosalind's voice came from behind him. She hurried forward to support the man leaning against the memorial tablet. The lights were off, and he was drunk, keeping watch over a piece of wood. It sent a shiver down Rosalind's spine. She now lived at the Thorne estate, but Ethan forbade anyone, even the cleaning staff, from entering this room. Everyone had to stay far away from this room, and especially from this memorial tablet. So, for the entire time she had been living here, she had been staying in a guest room. "Ethan, little Hope is gone. You shouldn't always do this to yourself. If she knew, she would be heartbroken to see you like this," Rosalind said, trying to curry favor. The man slumped over the table, lifted his eyelids and looked at the tablet, at the sweet black and white photo on it. "Would she?" he murmured. "She'd be heartbroken for me. She must hate my guts. Wife, am I right?" As he spoke, his large hand caressed the black and white photo on the tablet, talking to the person in the picture as if she were alive. "Wife, you must hate me, right? You died with hatred in your heart, didn't you? I'm sorry. I made your passing so painful." He buried his handsome face in the cold tablet, as if that would bring him closer to Hope. Rosalind, standing behind him, felt a chill run down her spine. For the past 2 years, Ethan Thorne would often get drunk, and when he did, he would talk to this memorial tablet for a whole day and night. Talking to a dead person, she was too scared to even get close. Wasn't he afraid that Hope would actually crawl out of the ground to find him one day? Of course, even if she came back as a ghost to find him, it would be a dream come true for him now. Unfortunately, in the past 2 years, she, Hope, had never once appeared before him. She had completely vanished from his world. The more obsessed Ethan Thorne was with Hope, the more Rosalind's hatred grew. She hated Hope. 2 years ago, she hated her for marrying Ethan, hated them for having a child now. She hated that even though Hope was dead, she still had to compete with a dead woman for his affection. Though Rosalind was filled with hatred, she never dared to show it in front of Ethan. But she was far from resigned. She walked up and looped her arm through Ethan's. "Ethan, you're drunk. Let me help you to the bathroom for a shower, and then you can sleep." The man rarely came home. Even when he did, he would sleep in Annette's room with his precious daughter. Now that little Annette was in the hospital, it was a rare opportunity she had to seize. "Don't," Ethan irritably shook off the hand on his arm. "She waited for me for so many nights, I have to keep her company too. Otherwise, my Hope will be very lonely at night, right?" As he spoke, his large hand stroked the photo on the tablet, as if the person in the picture were alive and could hear his words. Ethan said, "I made her wait for me for so many nights. From now on, I'll keep you company for just as many nights forever." "Ethan," Rosalind couldn't help but complain. "Ethan, if you're with her, what about me? I ended up in a coma in a car crash. Because of you now that little hope is dead. Can't you let her go and look at me? She waited for you for so many nights, and now I'm waiting for you for just as many nights." As she spoke, tears welled up in Rosalind's eyes. She had waited for this man for 2 whole years, and she had got nothing. She lived in a luxurious house with servants, but what else did she have? She had to watch Ethan Thorne love a dead woman every day. She couldn't help but feel resentful and jealous. Then, she couldn't resist adding, "Besides, little Hope never did anything for you, while I—" "Shut up," crashed. The words were barely out of her mouth when the bottle of whiskey in Ethan's hand was smashed at Rosalind's feet. "You are not to say another word about Hope, and you are certainly not to say a single bad thing about her." He hated it when people tried to drive a wedge between him and Hope, especially when they criticized or blamed her. Rosalind jumped back, startled by the bottle smashing at her feet. She swallowed whatever else she was going to say, silenced by his fury, but she was still unwilling to give up. She changed the subject, her voice pitiful. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to talk about her. I just don't want to see you like this. Otherwise, it's so late, let's just go to sleep. Let me help you to bed." Rosalind spoke in a soft, gentle voice. Looking at the man slumped drunk over the memorial tablet, she boldly moved forward to help him to the bed. As they walked, she tried to take off his clothes, only to see him grab that dark object and take it with him. She got the man to the bed, but he insisted on bringing the memorial tablet with him, cradling it in his arms as he slept. In the middle of the night, Rosalind shivered. For some reason, she always felt a sense of dread whenever she saw that memorial tablet. Ethan often said the photo on it was of Hope when she was sweet and pure, but to her, the photo always seemed to be glaring at her with hatred. So she usually avoided the memorial tablet at all costs, let alone getting close to it. Ethan lay on the double bed, one arm wrapped around the tablet, the other lovingly stroking the black and white photo. He murmured softly, "Wife, we'll sleep together tonight. With me here, you're not alone. From now on, I won't stay out all night. I won't make you wait for me until dawn. I won't fail you, okay?" As he spoke, he rubbed his chiseled face against the photograph. He murmured, "I miss you so much." He really, really missed her. He missed her so much he wished he could hold her every night, see her familiar face, and hear her familiar voice. But what he hated even more was his own actions back then. If he hadn't personally sent Hope to prison, if he hadn't hurt her again and again, would she at least not have had suicidal thoughts? At least she would still be alive, and he could still see her from time to time. Thinking about it, Ethan Thorne wanted to slam his head against a wall. He placed a gentle kiss on the photograph on the tablet, then turned to sleep. Rosalind, standing by the bed, couldn't help but shudder. She pouted coquettishly, "Ethan, can we sleep together tonight?" "Don't touch me." Ethan turned over, still clutching the tablet, his back to Rosalind. He said coldly, "Get out. I want to be with her for a while." This wasn't a while. Every time, Ethan Thorne used this excuse to reject her. And this while was clearly going to last the whole night. She had seen it with her own eyes for the past 2 years. It wasn't just her. Ethan Thorne was like this with every woman. But she didn't dare complain to the man before her. She could only leave, resentfully. Ethan lay on the double bed and placed the tablet on the pillow beside him. His eyes were hazy with drink, but he still stared at the photograph on the tablet without blinking, unwilling to look away. It was as if he could never get enough of looking at the person in the photo. For the past 2 years, whenever little Annette wasn't in the hospital, this was how he slept. Even when Annette was at home, Ethan would wait until she was asleep before returning to his own bedroom. Because he had made Hope wait for him for over 1,000 nights, he had made a silent vow to never let her spend another night alone, even if she wasn't there. For several days, Hope's condition slowly improved from her depressive state. But this time, it wasn't like in Zurich, where Miles could comfort her and she would be better in a day. These past few days, Hope had been constantly plagued by her fear of the city. She was afraid the police would take her away, afraid that men in black suits were Ethan Thorne's bodyguards. She often had nightmares of being submerged in the icy water dungeon. In Zurich, Miles would take her for walks every day. But these past few days, Hope was even more afraid of interacting with people, not even daring to step outside. Coming to this city seemed to have made her condition worse. Even today, when Miles took Hope to the hospital, it was only after much persuasion that she agreed. Hopi, the doctors at this hospital are top-notch. They've cured many patients with severe depression. Just cooperate with whatever he says. I'm sure the psychiatrist can help you get better, Miles said with concern. He wasn't an expert on depression, but because of Hope, he had taken courses on the subject over the past 2 years. Still, he only knew the basics. Hope instinctively took Miles's hand. She knew she had been acting strangely these past few days. But ever since she had seen Ethan, she had felt a strong aversion to this city. She rejected this city, wanting only to run far, far away. Relax, it's okay. Miles squeezed the hand in his, offering comfort. These past few days, he could feel that Hope was not her usual self. It was as if she had reverted to the state she was in 2 years ago, when he had just rescued her from prison, when she had just woken up on the operating table. They entered the consultation room, and Miles exchanged a few words with the doctor. They seemed to be friends who had known each other for a long time. "Hello, you must be Miss Fairchild?" the doctor asked, looking at Hope. Hope nodded, not speaking. The doctor continued, "Miss Fairchild, Miles has told me a bit about your condition. Now, I'd like you to cooperate with me and answer a few questions." Hope nodded in agreement. "In the past 2 years, can you tell me what memories triggered you to have thoughts of self-harm? What were you thinking about when you hurt yourself?" The doctor, sitting opposite her, asked as he prepared to take notes. In an instant, all the memories from 2 years ago exploded in her mind like a time bomb. Her 2 previous miscarriages, the cold surgical knife piercing her abdomen, her countless pleas to Ethan Thorne, and how, in front of Rosalind, he had always chosen to believe Rosalind, not her. The feeling of not being trusted, of facing baseless accusations and harm, had driven her to despair. For all these years, she had never mentioned a word of this to Miles. Not because she wanted to bury it, but because it was simply too difficult to talk about. The doctor saw that Hope wasn't answering. He tried again, "Miss Fairchild, if you try to talk about it, you can slowly." "I don't want to talk about it," Hope gritted her teeth. "I want to go back. Miles, can we go back, please? I don't want to talk about the past." She didn't want to think about how much Ethan had hurt her, and she certainly didn't want to say it out loud. She would rather bury it in her heart. They had gone through similar check-ups many times in Zurich, and the results had always been the same. Hope was unwilling to talk about the past, wanting to keep it hidden. Seeing the pleading look in the small woman's eyes, Miles felt both soft-hearted and helpless. "Hopi, let's try to talk about the past. If you don't want to tell the doctor, you can tell me. At the very least, we have to start by facing it, don't we? If one day we can calmly face the past, if you can calmly face Ethan Thorne, we can." "I don't want to hear it, I want to go back." Hearing him bring up these things again and again, Hope stood up in disgust and walked out. Miles, afraid she would run off in her emotional state, had no choice but to follow her out of the consultation room. "Hopi, we can't keep going on like this, I ask you, but you never say anything. But you keep these things locked in your heart, and you can't resolve them. How are you supposed to live the rest of your life? Hopi, we need a new beginning," but this new beginning had been going on for 2 years, and it had yet to truly begin. Hope frowned, not listening to a word Miles was saying. Instead, she said, "Miles, can you please not take me to see doctors anymore? I don't want to be treated, it's not working anyway. We've seen so many doctors, and it hasn't helped. We might as well give up. As long as you're by my side, that's all that matters." Hope tugged on Miles's arm coquettishly. Over the years, she had come to rely on Miles as her only support. No matter what, Miles was always there for her. When her life was on the line, he was always the first to save her. Over time, Hope had gradually come to see Miles as her family. Okay. Miles's heart softened. "If you don't want to see a doctor for a while, I won't take you, but we can't just stop treatment altogether. I wouldn't be able to rest easy." As he spoke, he gently pinched Hope's cheek, his eyes full of affection. Miles had always been a man of simple desires, but ever since he had met Hope again, his heart was moved by her every action. He couldn't resist her pleas, her coquettishness, her every smile. So for the past 2 years, he had always been lenient and indulgent with her. Seeing that the little woman's mood had stabilized, he said, "Hopi, wait for me at the door for a minute." I'll just go talk to the doctor about your situation, and I'll be right out, okay? Considering Hope didn't want to be in there anymore, he had her wait outside. Okay, Hope replied without much enthusiasm. Be good. Don't wander off. I'll be out in 10 minutes. Miles added another gentle reminder. Usually, when Hope's emotions were stable, she was fine. It was only when she was reminded of the past that her condition worsened. I know. I'll just stand here and wait for you. Hope grumbled and gave Miles a little push. After watching him go back inside, she leaned against the wall in the hospital corridor, waiting. Mommy, 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 from not far away, a little girl's urgent cries rang out. Hope looked over and saw a little girl, who looked to be about 1 or 2 years old, sitting on a bench in the hospital corridor, calling out to her. Hope couldn't tell the girl's exact age. She looked very frail, a tiny bundle sitting on the bench like a little doll. She looked to be under 2, but she could talk and her words were quite clear, so she could also be 2. Mommy, mommy, little Annette sat on the bench, shouting at the top of her lungs. But because of her condition, she still couldn't walk, and her legs were very weak. All she could do was sit on the bench and keep calling out to Hope. Ethan Thorne had shown her photos of Hope, and the memorial tablet in Daddy's room had a black and white photo on it that looked exactly like this woman. Now, little Annette's sharp eyes had spotted her, and she was shouting at Hope from across the corridor. Whether it was a mother-daughter connection or something else, Hope had been particularly sensitive to children these past 2 years. Whenever she saw a child under 2, she couldn't tear her eyes away, and her mind would be flooded with the cruel images of the induced abortion. Mommy, mommy, come here. Annette wants a hug. Hug. The little girl waved her short arms at Hope. When Hope didn't come over, she grew anxious and frustrated, wishing she could be by her mommy's side immediately. Why didn't mommy recognize her? Why didn't she come over when she saw her? Annette's eyes filled with tears, her big, watery eyes staring at Hope, anxious and helpless. Her 2 weak little legs dangled in the air, kicking restlessly. Suddenly, the child lost her balance and tumbled off the bench. Hope's heart lurched. She rushed over to little Annette, who was about 10 meters away, and scooped the child, who was still trying to crawl up from the floor, into her arms. Did you get hurt? Are you okay? Hope sat back down on the bench, holding the child. Little Annette sat on Hope's lap. Seeing her mommy for the first time, she even forgot to cry from the fall. Her big, watery eyes stared at Hope without blinking, as if she were looking at a precious treasure, full of curiosity and joy. Mommy, the little girl's soft voice called out. Her 2 small hands, not even as big as an adult's palm, clung to Hope's hand, and she kept murmuring, Mommy, Mommy's back. Mommy, Mommy. Mommy won't leave Annette again, right? Little Annette looked up at Hope with her big, bright eyes, as if seeking confirmation. Hope's heart inexplicably ached. Ever since she saw the child fall, her heart had been hurting, as if she were the one who had fallen, not the child. She brushed the dust off the little girl's hospital gown and lifted her sleeves and pant legs to check for injuries. Are you hurt anywhere? Did you get scraped? No, Mommy, Annette's not hurt. The little girl was very well behaved. Her voice was soft and sweet, like cotton candy. Good girl. Hope looked at the child and reached out to touch her fair cheek. She couldn't help but think that the child's features resembled her own when she was little. No, she must be having another episode. Miles used to tell her that whenever she saw a child at the playground or in the park, she would say it was hers. She must be mistaken again. No, it wasn't that she was mistaken. It was that her poor child was gone and would never come back. Hope's hands, wrapped around the child's small waist, went limp. Her eyes gradually became vacant. Mommy, you're back, right? Mommy, you won't leave again, right? Mommy, Mommy. The little person in her arms kept asking, insisting on calling her mommy when Hope didn't answer. Hope shook her head. I'm not your mommy. You've got the wrong person. She looked at the child's face with a lingering fondness, a thin layer of mist forming in her eyes. If my baby were still alive, she would be about your age now. As she spoke, a tear couldn't help but escape from Hope's eye. She hated it, and her heart ached for the 6-month-old child who had been so cruelly taken from her. She hated herself for not being able to protect her child, for not being able to let her see this world. She hated herself to death unconsciously, Hope's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. Soon, the skin broke and a thin line of blood appeared. Mommy, blood. Little Annette didn't understand why her mommy was doing this. She listened to Hope's words with a muddled understanding and tried to comfort her. Annette is here. Mommy, don't cry. Mommy will get hurt. As she spoke, the little girl's soft hands clumsily wiped the tears from Hope's face, still stubbornly calling her mommy. Seeing Hope's nails digging into her palm, the little girl placed her soft hand on Hope's and tried to pry her fingers open. She cried out, "Mommy, it hurts. Mommy will get hurt." Little Annette's soft, childish voice was filled with anxious concern. Her fair, innocent face was also full of worry, like a little angel, pure and blameless. Hope snapped back to her senses and reined in her emotions. She looked around but didn't see any family members. Just this little one, sitting all alone on the bench in the corridor, not even afraid of being taken. Out of concern, and because Hope had a soft spot for children, she asked, "Little one, where are your mommy and daddy? Why are you sitting here all by yourself?" The child was even wearing a hospital gown. To be so young and hospitalized and then left alone in the corridor. Weren't they afraid she would go missing? Little Annette's small hands gripped Hope's arm as if afraid she would run away, not letting go for a second. Her big, watery eyes looked at Hope with pure adoration. She answered honestly, "My daddy is at work and hasn't come yet. And my mommy is you don't you remember, mommy?" The little person in her arms spoke with a pitiful look in her eyes, as if a single wrong word from Hope would break her fragile heart. Hope, who had been about to explain, saw the child's expression and couldn't help but press her lips together, swallowing her words. For some reason, she just didn't want to hurt this little girl, and she couldn't bear to see any sadness on her face. Even the child's adoring and fervent gaze seemed to burn her heart. Hope didn't respond to Annette's words. Instead, she asked, "Do you know where your hospital room is? I'll take you back." It wasn't right to leave the child alone in the corridor. Perhaps it was out of kindness, or perhaps because the child's repeated cries of "mommy" had made her heart flutter. That must be why she was so concerned about this child. "Annette lives downstairs. Mommy, come to the room with Annette." Little Annette's eyes were once again filled with eager anticipation. She was just a child of about 2, but for some reason, her gaze always had the power to move her. Hope didn't refuse. She picked up the little girl from her lap and started walking downstairs. As she did, she unconsciously committed the child's name to memory. Annette. As Hope carried the child downstairs, neither of them spoke, but she could feel the little one's gaze fixed on her face, never wavering. It was as if she really were her mother, as if they hadn't seen each other in a long time, and the child was eagerly studying her, trying to memorize the face she hadn't seen for so long. Hope wanted to look at the child, but her fervent gaze made her shy away from meeting a child's eyes. With the little girl's guidance, Hope brought her back to her hospital room. It was empty, just the 2 of them. When Hope placed the child on the bed, the little girl still clung to her hand. She whined, "No, Annette wants mommy to hold her mommy. Hold me." Seeing that Hope was about to let go, the little girl's arms tightened around her neck, her whole body tensing up. Her voice was filled with protest and childishness, but Hope found herself unable to resist this child she had just met. Her hands, holding the child's waist, instinctively tightened. She patted her small back soothingly. After some time, little Annette, who was already frail and prone to sleepiness, drifted off in Hope's arms. Her slightly pouted lips were still murmuring, "Mommy." Even in sleep, her small hands clutched Hope's, afraid she would leave. After laying the sleeping child down on the bed, Hope found herself sitting by the bedside, unwilling to leave. She felt a certain closeness to this stranger's child, a familiar feeling she couldn't quite place. Was it because the child looked so much like her? Or was she just this fond of all children? Click suddenly, the door to the hospital room was opened from the outside. "Hope-y, what are you doing here?" Before Hope could turn around, she heard Miles's anxious voice from behind her. He walked over to her side. "I've been looking all over for you. I only found you because a passing nurse said you were with a child in a hospital room." They had agreed to wait outside the consultation room, but he had only spoken to the doctor for a few extra minutes before coming out to find her gone. In the past, whenever Hope disappeared without a word, it was usually a sign of a depressive episode. So this time, when he couldn't find her, he had run up and down the hospital several times before finally locating her. Seeing the commotion he was making, Hope quickly put a finger to her lips, shushing him, afraid his voice would wake the sleeping child. Miles fell silent. His gaze shifted to the child on the bed. He was surprised to find that the little girl's features bore an uncanny resemblance to Hope's. "Hopi?" Miles sighed, guessing that Hope had seen the resemblance and once again thought the child was hers. He said softly, "Hopi, let's go back. This is someone else's room and we don't know this child." His tone was careful, almost probing. Hope lowered her gaze. For some reason, she wanted to stay here. She felt an inexplicable attachment to a child she had just met. Was it because the child had called her Mommy? Was she becoming more and more sensitive? Hope couldn't help but say, "Miles, I kind of like this child. Can I come see her again? I feel like she looks so much like I did when I was little. Don't you think so, Miles? She even called me Mommy earlier. She told me her mommy hasn't been around for a long time. Can I be her mommy? Or maybe I can just visit her often. Can you?" Hopi, seeing Hope's mental state becoming more and more erratic, Miles's tone grew sterner, trying to snap her out of it. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. In the past, when Hope got along well with a child, she would act like this, wanting to be their mother, wanting to see them every day. Sometimes, it got so severe that she would actually believe she was their mother. "Hopi, this child is not yours. We have to be clear-headed. We have to move on from the past, okay?" Miles placed his hands on Hope's shoulders, making her look at him, trying to bring her back to reality. Hope reluctantly tore her gaze away from the child. She didn't know why, but she just really liked this child. She liked everything about her, from her appearance to the way she clung to her. Seeing that the person before him was still dazed, Miles added, "Hopi, if you really like children so much, why don't we go to an orphanage and adopt one?" "No, I don't want to." Hope refused outright. She didn't want an adopted child. That was someone else's child. But she felt an extraordinary fondness for the little one lying in the hospital bed. If she could, she would rather have this child. For a moment, Hope was caught in a contradiction. In the end, it was only after Miles's repeated persuasion that Hope was convinced to leave the room. At Thorne Industries. As Ethan Thorne was dealing with documents in his office, he felt his eyelid twitching uncontrollably. It had been twitching for over 10 minutes without stopping, and he felt a sense of unease. He couldn't even focus on his work. Finally, he put down his work and went to the hospital. Not long after Hope left the hospital room, the little one on the bed woke up with a start, as if by telepathy. "Mommy." Little Annette sat up and looked around, but she couldn't see Hope anywhere. Her fair, tender face immediately creased with worry. Her small, milky voice rose in volume as she called out to the empty room, "Mommy, Mommy. Mommy, come out, Annette wants a hug. Mommy. Mommy." The little girl looked around the empty room in fear, her eyes filled with grievance and fright. Soon, Mrs. P hurried into the room. She quickly put down the nutritious meal she had brought from home and went to pick up the little one who was trying to climb out of bed. "Annette, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Let's not cry, okay? Don't cry, don't cry." She had only gone home for a short while, leaving the child in the care of a nurse. She didn't expect the little girl's mood to change so drastically. After all, this wasn't Annette's first time in the hospital. Usually when she woke up to an empty room, she would just wait quietly. She wouldn't be like this. "Mommy, Mommy's gone," Annette whimpered, her little lips pouting. Mrs. P thought the little princess must have dreamed about Hope and woken up crying. She patted Annette's back and soothed her gently. "Annette, let's not cry. Our Annette misses Mommy, right? Daddy will come to the hospital after work. With Daddy here, it will be okay, right? Daddy will be here to keep Annette company soon. There, be a good girl." Mrs. P took very good care of little Annette. In the past, at the Thorne estate, she had always taken care of Hope. Now, whenever Ethan Thorne was away, he entrusted the little princess to her care. Annette waved her little hands and explained, "No, that's not it." Mommy came. Mommy came back to see Annette. The little girl's serious expression only made Mrs. P's heart ache more. She shook her head. "Our Annette must miss Mommy so much that she dreamed Mommy came to see her, right? Don't be sad, Annette. Mommy is in heaven, and she must miss Annette very much too. She will definitely watch over our Annette and keep her heel." No. Annette reached out her small hand to cover Mrs. P's mouth. She insisted, "Mommy is back. Mommy really came back." "Sigh." Mrs. P sighed, looking helpless. She figured the child was just missing her mother again, which was why she was talking nonsense. Seeing Mrs. P's indifference, Annette grew anxious and tried to get out of bed again. Her small, round face was filled with worry. Annette has to find Mommy. Mommy. Annette has to find Mommy and bring her back. Click, the hospital room door was suddenly opened from the outside. Ethan Thorne, dressed in a suit, appeared in the room. The little one, who had been about to get out of bed, saw Ethan and couldn't wait to share the exciting news. Daddy, Daddy, Mommy's back, the little girl's sweet, childish voice called out. Mrs. P didn't believe her, so she would tell Daddy. Daddy would definitely believe her. Daddy loved her the most. Daddy would definitely take her to find Mommy. The man at the door, who had not yet fully entered the room, froze, his hand still on the doorknob. His steps faltered at the doorway, his entire body frozen in place. Stunned by the child's words, it felt as if something had slammed into his heart. For a moment, Ethan Thorne stood rooted to the spot, completely still. For years, anything related to Hope Fairchild had the power to move him. Hope. It was as if she had taken root deep in his heart, an unshakable presence. He couldn't forget her, and the memory was agony. An agony of his own making. After a long moment, Ethan finally let his hand fall from the doorknob, his thoughts slowly returning to him. He walked towards Annette, looking somewhat dazed. Daddy? Little Annette glanced at Ethan, a hint of worry in her eyes, but her mind was still consumed with thoughts of hope. She whispered cautiously, Daddy, Mommy's back. Mommy came to see Annette just now. Is that so? Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed. His large hand gently stroked his daughter's soft hair. He didn't say much more, but an unmistakable layer of pain clouded his eyes. Mr. Thorne, you're back. Mrs. P spoke from the side. Just now, when I went to get the little princess's meal, I came back to find her in here crying for her mommy. She told me her mommy had just been here to visit. The little princess must have been dreaming again. Mrs. P sighed. Ethan remained silent, his face an unreadable mask, but his eyes were consumed by a deep, aching longing. No, it's not like that. Little Annette anxiously cut Mrs. P off, tugging on Ethan's large hand as if to explain to him in private. Her little mouth opened and closed as she pleaded. Daddy, Annette really saw Mommy. I wasn't dreaming. Mommy even held me, and she's the one who tucked me in. Annette spoke with urgency. Her small, aggrieved face was flushed with anxiety at their disbelief. She really did see Mommy. Mommy really did hold her. Why wouldn't Mrs. P and Daddy believe her? Hush now, Annette. Daddy will feed you something before you sleep. Ethan spoke as he lifted the small child onto his lap, preparing to feed her the special meal. He didn't respond further to what she was saying, but it was clear he didn't believe a word of it. Annette was frantic. Her short little legs kicked wildly, trying to get off the bed to find her mother, but she was already unsteady on her feet, let alone able to walk. Her legs were the one part of her body that had no strength. Still, she wouldn't give up, insisting, I have to find Mommy. Mommy really came. Daddy, I saw Mommy come. She's the one who carried me back to the room. Ethan's expression was somber. He simply held the little girl in his arms and soothed her gently. Annette, you saw wrong. Mommy isn't back. And she's never coming back. It was a truth he couldn't bring himself to tell this child. Even though Hope's memorial tablet sat in their home, he didn't want to bring it up with the little girl, fearing it would break her heart. Annette refused to accept it. I didn't see wrong. Mommy really is back. Mommy looks exactly like the picture Daddy showed me, exactly the same. The little girl's big, round eyes stared up at him, trying to prove she was telling the truth. But Ethan remained unresponsive, simply taking the food container and feeding his child. It wasn't just Annette. Sometimes, when he was drunk, he too would have moments where he thought Hope hadn't left this world, that she was still here. But thinking about it now, it was probably just because he and Annette missed her so very much. He never imagined that time, instead of dulling the pain, would only make the longing accumulate, growing deeper and more intense. After leaving the hospital, Hope's heart remained in that room with the child. Over and over, her mind replayed the little girl's innocent face, and her sweet, tender calls of Mommy made her own heart tremble. It was as if a single meeting had completely captured her soul. Hopi, how about I take you to see an orphanage? We could adopt a child together. What do you think? In the car, Miles Carter kept one hand on the steering wheel while his other reached out to tentatively take Hope's hand. Back when they were in Zurich, he had brought up adopting a child together. On one hand, he hoped it would help Hope move past the trauma of the forced abortion. On the other, it could help bring them closer. Hope pressed her lips together. In the past, she might have agreed to go with Miles to look at an orphanage, but today, For some reason, ever since meeting the little girl named Annette, she had no interest in other children. Right now, all she wanted was to see that child again. She felt an inexplicable fondness for Annette. Hope watched the scenery flash by the window and said quietly, "No, thanks, Miles. You don't have to take me to any more orphanages. I don't want to see other children. They should be seen by the people who need them." Right now, she just wanted to see Annette. She wanted it so badly that her mind was filled with the child's innocent image. Miles frowned. "Hopi, the children in the orphanage have their parents to see them, but that little girl from earlier, she should have her parents with her too, right? Can we try not to think about her anymore?" It was strange. Hope was just missing a child, yet he, Miles Carter, felt an odd pang of jealousy. Jealous of a child? Hope said, "Miles, can you help me find out if that child has parents? Or, I just really want to spend more time with her. Could you help me try to arrange something?" At the mere mention of Annette, Hope's entire demeanor brightened. Her mind was already racing with all sorts of ideas. Anything, as long as it meant she could see Annette just one more time. "Hopi," Miles sighed in resignation. He wanted to bring the woman beside him back to reality, but he didn't have the heart. In the end, the words died on his lips, and he managed only a single, soft reply. "All right." Seeing that Miles had agreed, Hope finally felt a sense of relief. A flicker of anticipation sparked in her heart. Did this mean she would get to see that child again soon? At the very least, when Miles handled things, he never failed. So, she and Annette would definitely meet again, right? "Miles, can we go to the mall?" In such high spirits today, Miles raised an eyebrow. For the past 2 years, the only places Hope ever went were those with children. She never set foot in malls or anywhere else, and she avoided crowded places at all costs. Today was certainly a change. As he spoke, Miles was already turning the steering wheel, heading for a nearby shopping center. A faint smile touched Hope's lips. "I want to buy a new outfit. I want to look pretty for Annette the next time I see her, and I want to get her some toys that kids like." As she spoke, Hope was already picturing their next meeting. Would it be at the hospital again? Or would Annette be discharged by then? Could they go to an amusement park together? If they went to an amusement park, what should she pay attention to? She had never taken a child to a place like that before. Just thinking about it made Hope's heart flutter with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Seeing her like this, Miles, who was sitting beside her, just smiled helplessly, though a flicker of gloom passed through his eyes. He wasn't sure if this change in Hope was good or bad. After all, she was simply transferring all her emotions onto that child at the mall. Taking advantage of Hope's good mood and her rare willingness to be in a crowded place, Miles made a point to walk her around, hoping to get her reacquainted with the outside world and lessen her aversion to crowds. Hope, for her part, put a great deal of thought into winning the child's affection, picking one toy after another in the toy section. Not knowing what Annette liked, she ended up buying a pile of toys with what little money she had. By the time they left the mall, Hope was still chattering nonstop. "Miles, do you think Annette will like the things I got for her? I have no idea what little kids like. What if she doesn't like them? If Annette doesn't like them, I'll have to bring her here myself." On the way, it was Annette this, Annette that. The entire conversation revolved around the little girl. Not far away, Rosalind Fairchild, who was just getting out of a car to enter the mall, saw the man and woman emerging from the building and froze. Hope Fairchild. She was so shocked she stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide as she stared, trying to confirm what she was seeing. "Rosalind, what's wrong?" Constance Fairchild asked with concern. "Mom, look who that is." Rosalind stumbled back behind her mother, terrified of being seen by Hope, yet desperate to keep her in sight. Hope's mother had passed away when she was young. Constance was only Rosalind's mother. The two families did not get along, but the animosity was primarily between Hope and them. Ever since Constance had married into the Fairchild family, she and her daughter had schemed to drive Hope out. At 16, Hope had moved out to fend for herself, living a life far from extravagant. "Mom, look at that woman, isn't that Hope?" "Isn't it? But she's dead, how is she still alive?" Rosalind was on the verge of a breakdown. It was like seeing a ghost in broad daylight. Only the two of them knew what she had done to Hope back then, how she had framed her. Hope must hate her to the bone. If it weren't for her, the police would never have come to arrest Hope. If it weren't for her taunting Hope with those photos, Hope wouldn't have had a mental breakdown, which led to Ethan Thorne sending her to prison. Seeing Hope now, Rosalind was nearly hysterical. She clearly remembered that Hope had killed herself in prison. How could someone who looked exactly like her just appear out of nowhere? Rosalind, you calm down, calm down. Maybe that person just looks a lot like Hope. Constance patted her daughter's shoulder comfortingly. But her gaze, like Rosalind's, was fixed on Hope. Unwavering, a chill ran down her spine. Mom, that is Hope, it's her, Rosalind insisted. Look, that's Miles Carter with her. I know, he was Hope's senior in university. Hope isn't dead, she's actually alive. Fear gripped Rosalind. What do we do, Mom? She's not dead. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. What is there to be scared of? You're the one in Ethan's heart. Back when she was alive, didn't Ethan hurt her for your sake? What difference does it make if she's alive or dead now? Don't be scared. Constance patted Rosalind's back, trying to calm her. But how could she be calm? The Ethan Thorne of today was not the man he was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Ethan Thorne would have done anything to hurt Hope for her sake. But 2 years later, in these past 2 years, had he even given her a proper look? Whenever he came home, his eyes were either fixed on that daughter who was a miniature version of Hope, or on that dry memorial tablet. For the past 2 years, she hadn't been able to capture his attention as much as a piece of wood. No, Mom, you don't understand. The person in Ethan's heart now isn't me. It's her, it's Hope, Rosalind said, her voice filled with bitter resentment. I did so many terrible things to her back then, making Ethan think she was a horrible woman, but he still has her in his heart. If she's alive now and tells Ethan everything, she couldn't even imagine it. For the past 2 years, living in the Thorne mansion, no one knew better than her how much remorse Ethan Thorne felt for Hope. She had seen his nightly longing with her own eyes. Ethan was already consumed by guilt. If he found out that Rosalind's manipulations were the cause of everything, he would probably kill her. Rosalind, don't worry, it won't happen. They won't see each other. Constance comforted her. If Hope was going to tell Ethan about you, she would have done it in the past 2 years. Hope doesn't want to see Ethan now, so they won't meet. We're safe, don't be afraid. Really? Rosalind hesitated. But her mother's words made sense, and the knot of fear in her chest loosened slightly. As Hope got into Miles's car, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine, as if someone was watching her every move strangely. That cold, sinister feeling was exactly like the one she'd had years ago, when she was kneeling in a pool of her own blood in Rosalind's hospital room. Only to look up and see the comatose woman's eyes open. The sharp, malicious gaze from that day could send shivers down one's spine. And it felt identical to what she was feeling now. But when she turned around, she saw no one behind her, no one following or watching her. Hopi, get in. What's wrong? Seeing her stand by the car door for so long, Miles followed her gaze and looked behind her. His eyes landed on a car about 30 feet away. After less than a second, he looked away. Get in. We'll figure out how to surprise Annette when we get back, Miles said. At his words, the unsettling chill Hope had felt instantly vanished. Her mind was filled with the image of a lovely little face, as bright and warm as the sun. The Thorne mansion. For 2 consecutive days, Ethan Thorne stayed at the hospital with Annette. Rosalind called him several times, urging him to come back, but he ignored her, eventually stopping answering her calls altogether. But typically, Ethan Thorne would come home at least once every 3 days. And when he returned, it wasn't to see her. It was to see Hope. He had said that in their 3 years of marriage, he had never spent a single night at home. Hope's heart had grown cold and disappointed with him. So from now on, he would use the rest of his life to compensate for her 3 years, to make up for it by staying at home. Ethan, you're back. It was the 3rd day. Rosalind, guessing that Ethan would return today, had changed into a sexy slip dress that left her slender arms and pale legs completely exposed. Even though Ethan Thorne hadn't given her a proper look in 2 years, she still held out hope for every precious moment they had alone together. But this time, it was the same as always. Ethan, who had just walked in, didn't even lift his eyes as he went straight upstairs, heading for the bedroom he had once shared with Hope, just like every other time in the past 2 years. It was as if the only reason this house existed was for him to come back and see Hope. Rosalind bit her lip. She hurried to catch up with his quick steps and said, "Ethan, I know a doctor in America who can cure Annette's inability to walk. It will just take a few years of treatment. Ethan, why don't we immigrate to America for Annette's sake?" It worked. The man who had been striding towards the bedroom just a second ago immediately stopped in his tracks. This was the first time Rosalind had seen Ethan Thorne look directly at her. Meeting his sharp gaze, she couldn't help but blush. Then she heard the man's flat voice, "What's the doctor's name? Have him brought here." Ethan stared straight at her face, but there was no trace of admiration or interest in his eyes or on his face because of what she was wearing today. It was as if he had completely ignored her attire. Or perhaps he hadn't even noticed. Rosalind gritted her teeth and continued, "I've tried to ask that doctor, but he's unwilling to travel abroad to treat patients. He only wants to stay in America. So, Ethan, why don't we just take Annette to America for treatment?" Ethan frowned. His tone held a hint of displeasure. "Give me his contact information later. I'll get in touch with him. As for going abroad, forget it, and don't ever mention immigration again." Rosalind's face turned beet red. Now what? She had backed herself into a corner. What contact information was there to give? "But Ethan, that doctor is rather eccentric. He doesn't have a phone number. You have to go to America in person to see him. Why don't we go to Amory? We're not going." Before she could finish, Ethan cut her off bluntly. "Don't mention America again. I don't want to leave the city that doesn't have her." He had no interest in America or immigration. He only wanted to stay on his and Hope's turf. He missed her. He missed her every single moment. If it weren't for Annette being in the hospital, he would have stayed in this house all the time, surrounded by the shadows of her presence. As if she had never left, as if he and Hope were back to how they were 2 years ago. As Ethan turned to leave, Rosalind quickly stepped in front of him. "Ethan, if you don't go, what about Annette's illness? You have to think about her." "Rosalind, what are you hiding?" Ethan narrowed his eyes. In his quest to cure Annette's condition, he had familiarized himself with renowned doctors from all over the country. Especially now that he had invested in several medical corporations, his knowledge of the medical field was extensive. And this so-called famous doctor Rosalind mentioned, he had never heard of him. Ethan's voice was cold. "Rosalind, I always thought you were a simple person. I never expected you to start lying and being so secretive." "No, I'm not, Ethan." Ethan's tone was flat. "Move out in a few days. This place isn't suitable for you. I've already found you a house and it's not too different from this one." "What?" Rosalind froze in place, stunned. "Move out." The reason she was living here wasn't to enjoy the luxury and wealth. It was to become Mrs. Thorne. "Ethan, why are you suddenly asking me to move out? If you don't want to go to America, then we won't go. I won't bring it up again, all right?" Rosalind pleaded. "Besides, look, I've been with you for so many years. The car accident happened because I was saving you. Can't you, for the sake of me saving you back then, just let me stay by your side?" "Rosalind, it is precisely because I remember that incident that I spent 3 years caring for you day and night while you were unconscious, neglecting her. And it is because of that memory that I agreed to let you move into the Thorne mansion. Otherwise, not just anyone can live here." Ethan's voice grew colder, his calm words laced with a deadly chill and a sense of danger. Each word was a warning, daring no one to disobey. If he had known that Hope would actually sign the divorce papers, if he had known that she would later kill herself in prison, he would have died before letting her wait for him to come home, day after day, night after night. For 3 years, how cold and disappointed must she have been with him to choose to end her life in those 3 years of marriage? In her coldest, most desperate moments, there probably wasn't a single shred of warmth for her to remember. Every time he, Ethan Thorne, thought about the years of disappointment he had caused Hope, he hated his own cold-hearted cruelty. He hated everything he had ever done to her. He often replayed the details of their time together, trying to find even a single instance where he had brought her warmth. In the end, he found that all he had ever done to Hope was hurt her relentlessly. That pain was like a dense, inescapable net, trapping her with no way out, forcing her to endure constantly. Rosalind wanted to say more, but he shut the door on her. No room for negotiation. In the past 2 years, her initial reason for moving into the Thorne mansion was her pleading and the fact that she had just recovered from her condition. And in those 2 years, this wasn't the first time Ethan Thorne had suggested she move out. But every time she brought up the car accident that had left her in a coma, he would relent and let her stay. But this time, he was unyielding. There was absolutely no room for discussion. A sense of panic and fear began to creep into her heart, especially now that she knew Hope was still alive. For several days, Hope stayed cooped up at home, her thoughts consumed by the little girl. Whenever she got a call from Miles, or whenever he came home, the very first thing she would ask was whether there was any progress on news about Annette. She was filled with curiosity about the child. She wanted to know everything: her family, her age, why she was in the hospital. She knew this behavior was like prying, that it might make others uncomfortable, but she couldn't help but think about that child who felt so strangely familiar. It had gotten to the point where she now spent her days just staring at the pile of toys, imagining the look on the child's face when she received her gifts. Would she like the things she had picked out? This cycle of fantasy had pushed Hope to the edge of anticipation and despair. She was so impatient, she wished she could see that child right away. That day, because there was still no news about Annette from Miles, and because Hope's longing for the child had grown into an obsession over the past 2 days, Hope decided to brave another trip to the hospital, just to see. Maybe Annette hadn't been discharged yet. After leaving Annette's room last time, Hope had made a special note of the room number, thinking that she might one day go back to see the child. As Hope, dressed in the new clothes she had bought specifically for this occasion and carrying bags full of gifts for the little girl, entered the hospital, she happened to be passing by the hospital garden when she saw a familiar little figure sitting on a bench, basking in the sun. The sight of her, so peaceful and innocent, made Hope think of a tranquil moment frozen in time. Just looking at her felt as if there was no sadness or pain in the world, only purity and beauty. In the sunlight, she was as beautiful as a little angel who had descended to earth, softening her heart. Hope observed from a distance for a long time. Seeing that Annette was once again all by herself on the bench, she finally dared to approach. "Annette." Hope walked towards the little girl, her voice tentative and cautious. She had heard that children have short memories, and she was afraid that after just a few days, Annette would have forgotten her. A stranger, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." The moment little Annette saw Hope, her half-asleep expression vanished and her eyes flew open. Disbelievingly, she rubbed her eyes with her little hands. Once she was sure it was really Hope, she didn't hesitate for a second and jumped off the bench, ignoring the fact that her legs were weak and she couldn't walk. She tried to run towards Hope, but the moment she was off the bench, her small body tumbled to the ground. She didn't cry or make a fuss, terrified that Hope would leave without a word again, just like last time. She pushed herself up from the ground and, using her little hands and feet, began to crawl across the stone path towards her. That desperate, pitiful sight made Hope's heart ache. She quickened her pace, rushing to the little girl's side. "Annette, why didn't you get up after you fell? You can't crawl around on the ground like that anymore, you understand?" Hope said as she scooped the soft little ball of a child into her arms. After placing her on a bench in the garden, she gently brushed the dust and dirt from her clean white hospital gown. Sitting on the bench, the little girl pouted at Hope's scolding. "Annette can't walk, so Mommy has to carry Annette," she said defensively, her little lips pushed out in a prominent pout. Hope, who had been kneeling to dust off Annette's pant legs, froze. Annette couldn't walk. Although she'd never had a child of her own, she had done a lot of research on child development when she was pregnant. Looking at this child, who could already speak quite clearly and wasn't particularly small, how could she not be able to walk? "Annette, how come you can't walk? Are your legs hurt?" As Hope spoke, she tried to set her back on the ground, wanting to see for herself if the child could walk. But the moment the child's feet touched the ground, her entire body became unstable. She clung to Hope's hand, refusing to let go, looking so fragile it seemed she could fall at any moment. Could the child have a broken leg or something? Hope didn't dare put her on the ground again. This time, her arms around the child tightened, afraid the little girl would fall again. She quickly examined Annette's chubby little legs, but there were no bruises or scars. "Annette, haven't you learned how to walk yet?" Hope asked gently. The little girl, of course, didn't know at what age children normally start walking. She just nodded seriously and replied, "Mhm. Then how old are you, Annette?" 2 years and 1 month old, over 2 years old. And still so small, and she can't walk. Hope looked at the child with a pang of fear. She remembered that the last time they met, the little girl couldn't get up after falling, and today was the same. And she hadn't even noticed it last time. An inexplicable pain pricked at Hope's heart. Could it be that Annette was in the hospital for treatment for her legs? She wanted to ask, but she was afraid the child wouldn't be able to explain clearly, so she didn't press further. Mommy came to see Annette today. The little girl, unaware of her own condition, was a picture of innocence, completely oblivious to how different she was from other children. Nestled in Hope's arms, she smiled with pure joy, like a child who had found a mother's love. Hope stroked the child's hair. "Yes, I came to see Annette. Did you miss me?" "Yes, yes, yes." Little Annette nodded her head repeatedly, her little hand clinging to Hope's sleeve, not letting go. The next second, her light brown eyebrows furrowed into a small frown. "Last time Mommy left, you left without telling Annette." "Mommy's bad," little Annette pouted angrily, but her eyes held the look of a wounded little animal, making one hesitant to even touch her. Hope felt a pang of remorse. "I'm sorry, Annette. Last time something came up, so I had to leave early. I won't do that again, okay?" "So Mommy's not leaving today? You're never leaving. You're not leaving Annette again." Mommy's back as she spoke. The soft little girl in her arms blossomed like a flower, overjoyed. Hope felt a strange sense of apprehension. She loved this child, even wanted to be with this child every day. She even cherished the child's repeated misunderstandings, her calls of mommy. She knew that if she deceived a child, then one day in the future, if this child ever found out that she wasn't her real mother, would she resent her? Would she hate her for the deception? Or would she stop talking to her, refuse to see her ever again? Thinking of those possibilities, Hope's heart sank with sadness. She selfishly wished that the child's mother would never come back, that she could take her mother's place forever. Mommy? Seeing that Hope wasn't answering, little Annette looked at her nervously, thinking she might say no. She asked again, her voice soft and weak, "Mommy won't leave again, right?" "Right." After a long silence, Hope finally spoke against her conscience. Then she couldn't help but ask, "Annette, why are you in the garden by yourself?" It seemed that every time she saw this child, she was alone, without a single family member around. Especially since the child was so young, not to mention her legs were weak and she couldn't walk. How could anyone feel safe leaving her outside alone? What if a bad person took her away? "The nurse brought me here. She'll be back in a little while." Little Annette murmured. Hope nodded and didn't say any more. She then placed the bags of gifts she had bought to the side and said, "Annette, I brought some presents for you this time. Why don't you open them and see if you like them?" Hope picked up a pink-wrapped gift box and placed it in little Annette's hands. The little girl's round eyes instantly lit up. "Annette gets a present?" Annette looked at the object in her hands in disbelief. Hope smiled and replied, "Yes, Annette gets a present. And it's from Mommy." This was the first time she had ever received a gift from her mommy before. Only Daddy would give her presents. No one else ever did. Seeing the child so delighted, Hope's heart filled with a sweet joy, as if she were the one receiving the gift, not giving it. Little Annette's small hands fumbled with the wrapping paper, revealing a Barbie doll inside that could light up, sing, and dance. The little girl held it in her hands, unable to put it down. The scene became Hope holding little Annette, and little Annette holding the Barbie doll. It was afternoon, and the sun shone down on them, creating a picture-perfect image, untainted, as if the whole world had become warm and harmonious because of the two of them. Besides toys, Hope had also bought the little girl plenty of children's snacks, clothes, pants, and shoes. She had bought a pile of everything a child could possibly need, afraid that if the little girl didn't like one thing, she could make up for it with another. Basking in the gentle warmth of the sun, they both grew drowsy. As it was getting late, Hope noticed the little girl in her arms blinking sleepily. "Annette, are you sleepy? Should I take you back to your room for a nap?" Hope stroked the child's soft, tender cheek. It was so smooth that her touch instinctively lightened, as if afraid of hurting her. "No, Annette's not sleepy." Little Annette shook her head, forcing her tired eyes wide open to show she wasn't sleepy at all. Hope chuckled. "You still need to sleep. Little kids have to take afternoon naps. Be good, I'll carry you back to your room to sleep." No, tears immediately welled up in little Annette's eyes. "Annette's not sleepy. Annette doesn't want to sleep if I go to sleep. Mommy will be gone when I wake up. I'm not sleeping. Not sleeping where?" A soft sob echoed in her ear. The child's cries were like a hand, twisting her heart into an ever more complex knot. Hope comforted her. "This time, Mommy won't leave. I'll stay right here with you until you wake up, okay?" "Really?" The little girl looked up at Hope pitifully, her eyes searching for the truth in her words. Hope nodded. "Really, I won't leave." "Really?" Really? The same word came from two different voices at the same time, only one voice wasn't from the little Annette in her arms, but from a man walking towards them down the stone path. He was dressed in a sharp suit. With the sun at his back, his tall, straight figure was cast in a striking, formidable silhouette. Backlit as he was, he exuded a familiar, satanic aura. Ethan Thorne had his hands in his trouser pockets. He walked right up to Hope, who was sitting on the bench holding little Annette. Looming over her, his voice was filled with cold intensity. "This time, you're really not leaving." In that instant, it felt as though time had stopped at his arrival. Hope sat on the bench, completely stunned. Last time, running into Ethan Thorne in the conference room had already thrown her into a panic. But this time, they were face to face. The identity she had painstakingly hidden for 2 years was completely exposed in this single moment. For a long moment, Hope couldn't speak. All she wanted to do was run far away from Ethan Thorne's sight. Get out of here, fast. She didn't want to stay here for another second. "Daddy, Daddy," the soft, adorable little ball of fluff in her arms suddenly called out "Daddy" to Ethan Thorne. Hope was struck dumb. She was already reeling from Ethan's sudden appearance, and now the little girl in her arms was calling this man Daddy. Then, who was the child's mother? Was this child Ethan's with another woman? Or, Hope remembered what Annette had told her just a moment ago, that she was 2 years and 1 month old, and from the time of her induced labor until now, it had been exactly 2 years and 1 month. How had she not realized that before? But their child had been brutally taken from her back, then she had seen it with her own eyes, so what was going on with this child? Was she really her baby or not? "Wife, Annette is our child." Just as Hope's mind was racing with questions about the child's origin, the man before her spoke. His words were both shocking and exhilarating. This child was hers, her baby was still alive. Annette was really her child. Had this child recognized her from the start? Is that why she had called her Mommy at their very first meeting? It all made sense now. Hope's heart was a tangle of emotions. Even her hands, wrapped around the child's waist, began to tremble slightly. This was her child. This was Hope Fairchild's child. She wasn't dead, her baby was alive. And she was only just finding out now. She had been away from her child for 2 whole years. Annette? A film of tears welled up in Hope's eyes, and she pulled the little girl in her arms even tighter. "Annette, my Annette, this is my Annette, she's still here." Ethan sat down next to Hope. His large hand rested on her shoulder comfortingly. "This is our Annette, she's still here." Just as his hand was about to draw Hope closer into his embrace, she flinched away, clutching the child and standing up, putting distance between them. She flinched away from his touch. She recoiled from his approach. Even though the child in her arms was theirs, she still felt a deep-seated resistance and fear. Towards this man, she felt nothing but endless terror and panic. From the moment he appeared, the memories of the past 2 years began to replay in her mind, leaving Hope's hands and feet cold even now. To her, Ethan Thorne was like a devil from hell. He could make her suffer, despair, and leave her covered in scars. He could throw her back into the water dungeon to soak in meter-deep ice water day and night. Or, for Rosalind's sake, send her back to prison. Hope's cold hands tightened around little Annette as she backed away. She wanted to take her child and leave. She wanted to leave his world, disappear from his sight. In short, everything she wanted had to do with never seeing him again. Seeing Hope get up and retreat with the child, Ethan also stood up and moved towards her wife. He could feel Hope's panic, and it made him inexplicably cautious as he approached her. But now, his heart and mind were completely filled with her. All he wanted was to hold this figure he hadn't seen in 2 years. Leaving Annette in the garden had become his daily routine. For the entire week, he hadn't gone to the office. Every day, he had the nurses bring the child to the garden, just waiting for Hope to show up. And he had always stayed nearby, watching from a distance. At first, when little Annette said she had seen Hope, he hadn't believed her. But then Rosalind had brought up immigration out of the blue. The two events were seemingly unrelated, but for some reason, he had connected it to Hope. Perhaps it was his desire to stay in the city where she had been that made him question the truth of Annette's claim. He had held onto a sliver of hope, or perhaps it was a foolish doubt about a dead person's fate that had kept him at the hospital every day, terrified of missing Hope's arrival. And unbelievably, Hope had really come. She was really alive. God only knew how excited and shocked he had been, hiding behind that tree just moments ago. For the past 2 years, he had spent every day regretting what he had done to Hope. Every day wishing for a chance to start over. He thought this regret and longing would last a lifetime, but he never imagined she was still alive. "Wife, I'm not your wife, I'm not. Hope stumbled backward in fear, her shoulders trembling slightly. She held up a hand to stop the approaching man. "Don't come any closer, I don't know you, I don't know who you are, I have to go back. In that moment, Hope's emotions spiraled out of control. The words tumbled out of her mouth, unknowingly repeated, her eyes vacant and panicked. She looked around frantically, then at the baby in her arms, who was looking at her strangely. She clutched the child and tried to run. This was her child, this was Hope Fairchild's child. She had to take back the child that belonged to her. She wanted to live with Annette, to make up for all the time she had lost with her Hope backed out of the garden. All the while keeping a wary eye on the man who was still approaching her. Why was he still following her? Why hadn't he left? She wanted her child. "Wife, I was wrong. Can I apologize to you for what happened 2 years ago? Let's go home, start over, okay?" For some reason, perhaps because of the fear and dread in the woman's eyes, her vacant stare was identical to how she had looked 2 years ago when the child was taken from her womb. Just like now, terrified and afraid. The harm he had done to her, it must have been immense. Perhaps it was because of this that Ethan didn't dare get too close, afraid of scaring her. Even his tone was different from usual, tinged with a pleading, gentle quality. How could Hope believe his words? Apologize? Go home. Start over? In the past, she might have held on to hope for those words, but now all she felt was fear. She was afraid this was just another one of Ethan Thorne's tricks to placate her. Afraid that if she went back to that house, she would be thrown into the water dungeon again. She was afraid that if she went with this man, he would send her back to prison, take her child away, and, just like 2 years ago, reject her pregnancy with disgust. Telling her she wasn't worthy of having his child, her fears were too many, too deep. She didn't want to go back to that life from 2 years ago. A life spent drowning in disappointment, pain, helplessness, and begging. Thinking about those days, Hope's emotions were already spiraling out of control. If it weren't for the child she had just gotten back in her arms, she might have done something terrifying right now. Ethan didn't know about Hope's current condition. He just thought she was rejecting him. Not wanting this endless retreat to continue, he took a step forward and grabbed Hope, who was still trying to escape. He was afraid now. Afraid that Hope would leave him heartlessly again, just like 2 years ago. Afraid she would trick him again into thinking she wasn't in this world. Afraid that if he missed this chance, she would disappear from his life once more, just like the past 2 years. A time of utter darkness for Ethan Thorne. "Wife, I was wrong. Let's go home, okay? Let's start over. Please don't leave again." He held onto Hope's shoulders, preventing her from escaping. But the moment he touched her, Hope's entire body recoiled in panic and distress. Her already trembling shoulders now felt as if they were in the grip of death itself, and fear washed over her. "Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. I don't know you, I'm not Hope, you've got the wrong person. Hope is dead, she's dead." Hope broke free, and without a second thought as to whether the man behind her would follow, she ran, clutching her child as if escaping for her life. She didn't want to be here, she wanted to go to Zurich. She would take the child she had just gotten back and return to Zurich, and never come back here again. How could Ethan let her go? The person, who had been missing for 2 years, had just returned. How could he let her slip away just as he was about to give chase again? A figure suddenly blocked his path. Miles Carter spoke. For her own good, stop chasing her. Miles's appearance instantly ignited the temper of the man who had been so patient just a moment ago. "Stop chasing her, so you can chase her instead?" Ethan grabbed Miles by the collar. "You're the one who helped her hide the fact that she was alive for the past 2 years, weren't you? You're the one who tampered with the hospital security footage, so I couldn't see that Hope was still alive, right? Miles, you knew all along that Hope and my child were alive. You didn't want to tell Hope that Annette was her daughter, all to satisfy your own disgusting, selfish reasons." Shut up! Fire blazed in Miles's eyes. But he had to admit, those were indeed his thoughts. But it was only because he wanted Hope to stay by his side, because he didn't want to see her go back to how she was 2 years ago. Ethan glanced at the figure in the distance, who was fleeing with their child, and let go of his collar with a sneer. "I'll settle this with you later, right now." He just wanted to handle things with Hope first. At the very least, he didn't want her to run away like this again. seeing Ethan about to give chase again. Miles quickly blocked him. She has depression, she's already having an episode just from seeing you. If you don't want her to self-harm, I suggest you stay away from her if you keep provoking her like this. You'll only make her condition worse. If it wasn't absolutely necessary, Miles didn't want to tell Ethan Thorne anything about Hope's current state. He had brought Hope back to the country hoping she would slowly recover, not to be repeatedly triggered by Ethan Thorne, worsening her depression. The man, who had just taken a step forward, froze in place. She has depression? Yes. The private doctor he had sent to the prison back then had told him that Hope was showing signs of depression, but he never imagined that after 2 years, she would actually self-harm. After getting into a taxi with her child, Hope's heart was still pounding with fear, terrified that Ethan Thorne would chase after them, that he would drag her back. She didn't want to live that kind of life anymore. She really didn't. "Mommy, what's wrong?" The little girl in her arms looked at Hope with fear. The Hope of just now was different from the Hope from before. Before, Hope was always smiling at her eyes always filled with love. But the mommy of now seemed hurt, as if something terrible had happened. It's nothing." Hope then realized she had frightened the child. She had just run a long way with the child in her arms. She must have scared her baby. This was her baby, her child, lost and now found. Hope's gaze on the child's face deepened. She had studied the child's face carefully before, but now, knowing this was her baby, her gaze was exceptionally profound, as if she wanted to carve this little face into her heart. "Annette, Mommy is so sorry. Mommy was away from you for so long, and I'm only just now coming to see you." Hope gently rested her chin on the child's small shoulder, nuzzling her cheek. Her nose was filled with the child's milky scent, mixed with the lingering smell of medicine from the hospital, but to Hope, it was an unusually comforting scent. It helped to soothe her turbulent emotions from earlier. Annette was very well behaved. Her little hand even patted Hope's shoulder comfortingly, her voice soft. "Don't be sad, Mommy. It's okay, Annette is okay. Good girl." Hope turned her head and planted a gentle, cherished kiss on the child's fair cheek. "Mommy won't leave anymore. Mommy's back. From now on, Annette will always be with Mommy. Mommy won't leave Annette again, ever." Hope held the child tightly in her arms, as if afraid someone would snatch her away. Afraid that, like the past 2 years, she would live in ignorance of her baby's existence. She had been away from this child for 2 whole years. She felt she could hardly forgive herself. But thankfully, this child held no complaints or blame towards her. She was both sensible and lovable. All the way back to her apartment, Hope, holding Annette, kept looking over her shoulder, only relaxing and entering when she was sure no one was following them. To say it was her apartment was not quite right. It was Miles's. For the past 2 years, she and Miles had been living together, mainly because Miles was looking after her condition, afraid that if she lived alone, she would overthink things and self-harm when he wasn't looking. So they lived together, but always slept in separate rooms. The moment Hope entered the apartment, she carried the child into her room. But because she had been so desperate to see Annette these past few days, she had often lost control and thrown things. Now her room was still a mess. After placing Annette on the bed, Hope said, "Annette, wait a moment. Mommy needs to tidy up the room first." This child had surely lived well with Ethan Thorne. Her room was so messy, would her Annette be disgusted by her? Right now, Hope was extremely concerned about this child's opinion of her. She wanted to make sure that nothing, not even the smallest detail, would make the child dislike her. Annette sat on the bed with her short legs crossed, silent. Her little head just turned from side to side, looking around, full of curiosity about her mommy's home. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, a knock came from the door. The sound made Hope, who was tidying up the room, freeze in place. Ethan Thorne was here. It must be Ethan Thorne, come to drag her back. She had taken his daughter. He must be here to settle the score. Hope stood frozen in place, too scared to open the door, afraid that the person outside would burst in and demand retribution. Then, she heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. When the person who entered was Miles, Hope's heart finally settled. "Hope, you brought the child back." Miles entered Hope's room and saw the adorable little girl sitting on her bed, looking around. Ethan Thorne's words from earlier echoed in his mind. "You didn't want to tell Hope that Annette was her daughter, all to satisfy your own disgusting, selfish reasons." He had thought Ethan wouldn't know about these things, but he never imagined that in just a few days, Ethan, just like him, had already figured everything out. It was true. He had known for a long time that Hope's child was alive, and he had deliberately kept it from her. But all of that was only because he didn't want Hope and Ethan Thorne to get entangled again. He was afraid that Hope would be hurt by Ethan Thorne again, and he was afraid she would leave him. In the past, he had let Hope go to marry Ethan Thorne. This time, he didn't want to make the same mistake again. "Yes, Miles," Hope replied, then asked cautiously, "Miles, you don't mind that I brought the child back, do you?" After all, this was Miles's home. She still needed his permission. "Of course not. This is our home. You can bring anyone you want." Miles sat on the edge of the bed and started to play with the child. Hope sat down on the other side of little Annette. She explained gently to Annette, "Annette, this is Uncle Miles's home. From now on, you can just call him Uncle Miles." "Oh, hello, Uncle Miles." Little Annette obediently greeted him, though she was a little confused, but in her heart she was thinking, "Then isn't Daddy going to live here?" She decided to ask, "Mommy, when is Daddy coming to see Annette?" "Daddy was here just a moment ago, but now he's gone." Her words cast a silence over the room. Hope's expression darkened. Did this child prefer Ethan Thorne over her? Would she, after just a few days with her, want to go back to Ethan Thorne's side? Hope's heart grew increasingly flustered, but she still lied. "Annette, you'll stay with Mommy for a few days. We'll talk about that later. Besides, Mommy can be just as good to you as your daddy is. If there's anything Annette likes to eat or play with, you can just tell Mommy. Mommy can get you anything." Hope sat there, making promises to a child. To her now, it was as if her life had found new hope. And that hope was to spend the rest of her life with this child. To watch her Annette grow up safe and happy, that would be her greatest joy. Little Annette was very well behaved. She didn't make a fuss about not seeing her daddy. She just took Hope's hand and said, "As long as Mommy is with Annette from now on, that's all that matters. Annette doesn't need food or toys, I just want Mommy." Good girl. Hope's heart felt as if it had been touched by the child, a warm current flowing through her. Her hand holding the child's small hand tightened with affection. If only this child could stay by her side forever, how wonderful that would be. For 2 days, Hope was afraid of running into Ethan Thorne if she went out, so she and the child stayed at home. But good times don't last long. What you fear most is often what happens. On the 3rd day, a series of knocks came from the door. Knock, knock, knock. Hope opened the door, bang, bang, bang. "Hope, open the door, I have something to tell you." The fierce knocking was like a demon at the door, ferocious and overwhelming. Inside the apartment, Hope's heart leaped into her throat. "He's here, he's found his way to our door. Daddy, Daddy's here, Daddy's here." In contrast to the frantic Hope, little Annette's face lit up with a smile the moment she heard Ethan Thorne's voice. She was overjoyed. Sitting on the bed, she pointed at the door and chirped to Hope, "Mommy, open the door, Daddy's here." She hadn't seen her daddy in 3 whole days before. When Hope wasn't around, she got to see her daddy every day. Hope was too scared to even think about opening the door. She stood frozen in place, not daring to go near the door, afraid that the demon would burst right through it. Bang, 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 open the door outside. Ethan Thorne's furious voice continued to echo. Even though he knew Hope had depression now, the more she avoided him, the more his patience wore thin. "Mommy, open the door, Mommy, open." The calls from both the big one and the little one rang in Hope's ears. Finally, with a loud crash, the lock on the door was broken. Ethan Thorne burst in like a wild beast. You. Hope stumbled backward in terror. Everything felt like it was rewinding to those dark, sunless days 2 years ago. Ethan, who had been furious just a moment ago, saw the rejection and fear in Hope's eyes and couldn't bring himself to be harsh with her any longer. "Daddy, Daddy," little Annette sat on the bed, waving her little hands and calling out. Just as Ethan took a step towards the child, Hope rushed forward to block him. "You, don't come any closer, don't touch her." Annette was hers alone, even though this man had been taking care of little Annette for the past 2 years. In Hope's mind, Ethan Thorne didn't love Annette. Otherwise, why would he have wanted her child dead back then? Why would he have had the child brutally taken from her womb? "Wife, come home with me." Ethan ignored Hope's resistance and tried to take her away. He had originally planned to give Hope a couple of days to calm down and spend time with the child. But when he returned to the Thorne mansion and thought about this woman living with Miles Carter every day, the fire in his heart raged, desperate to be unleashed. "No, don't come near me." Hope backed up against the wall, her voice panicked. "I'm not your wife, Hope. Already divorced you. I'm not, Hope, I'm not. You have the wrong person. Wife." Ethan stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Let's take Annette and go home together, okay?" "I don't want to." She would never go back to that purgatory. She would never live with Ethan Thorne again, not even for another second. Hope's arms tightened around the child, her struggles in his presence like those of a deaf, pitiful little animal, utterly futile. "Be good now. Let's go back." "No, if you don't come back, then I'll take Annette back." No, the thought of the child she had just gotten back being taken away by this man made Hope clutch little Annette even tighter. "You can't take Annette back. Annette is mine. Don't come any closer." In a swift motion, Ethan snatched the child from Hope's arms. Hope instantly broke down. "Give me back my child, give me back my child." Hope tried to lunge forward and grab her, but she was no match for Ethan Thorne. She chased him from the apartment, but she couldn't keep up with his pace. Finally, at the elevator, Ethan turned to look at the distraught woman who had followed him out. "Wife, are you coming home with me and Annette, or not?" The Thorne mansion. Originally, Ethan Thorne hadn't wanted to bring Hope back like this, but somehow he had lost control. Whether it was selfishness or possessiveness, he just wanted her within his sight right now. He was afraid that if he let Hope stay out there any longer, he would lose sight of her again all the way, until they were standing at the entrance of the Thorne mansion. Hope's entire body was trembling, this place where she had once humbled herself. Stepping into the Thorne mansion again, it felt as if 2 years had passed in the blink of an eye. She hadn't been gone long, and yet she was back in this purgatory. Hope held little Annette tightly in her arms, a bitter smile on her face. 2 years ago, the consequence of her numerous escape attempts was being forcibly dragged back to this purgatory. She never thought that 2 years later, it would be the same. Hope felt increasingly pathetic and ridiculous. This time, how much suffering would she have to endure here? Was it the water dungeon waiting for her, or an even heavier punishment? Hope's feet felt as if they were filled with lead, so heavy that she couldn't take a single step into the Thorne mansion. Her body was already ice cold. "Wife!" Ethan saw Hope's fear. From her eyes, he could see just how much damage he had done to her over the past 2 years. It must have been a heart-wrenching pain. His large hand reached for Hope's waist, but she quickly sidestepped, refusing to be touched. His outstretched hand hung awkwardly in the air. Hope didn't dare to look at him. Because in the past, it was always Ethan Thorne who rejected her. If she dared to refuse him in the slightest, she would always face his explosive rage. In the past, when Hope Fairchild rejected him, Ethan Thorne would feel an inexplicable anger. But now, Hope Fairchild's repeated rejections and resistance, even the fear in her eyes, these reactions were like sharp arrows, stabbing him in the heart. For the first time, Ethan Thorne felt that being rejected was a piercing pain. And yet, he had rejected her so many times in the past. Her heart must have been shattered long ago, but facing the Hope of today, he couldn't bring himself to get angry. He was afraid that any more force, any more anger, would make her disappear from his world again. "Let's go inside," Ethan said gently. As he spoke, he even acted as a servant, opening the main door for her. The Thorne mansion was exactly the same as it was 2 years ago. The decor, the placement of every object, everything was the same. Originally, after receiving the divorce papers, Ethan had wanted to change everything in the Thorne mansion. But after learning of Hope's suicide, he finally understood his own heart. He couldn't live without Hope, never in this lifetime. Hope didn't speak, just held little Annette and deliberately kept a distance of several feet between them. Returning to this home, unlike Ethan, who was happy to have her back, she was only haunted by endless nightmares. To her, this place held only pain and despair. "Should I take you to our room to rest first?" Ethan asked. Hope didn't answer. Her feet moved heavily towards the room they used to share. Every step on these floors seemed to stir up a river of sorrow from the past. Her cold, stiff limbs moved like a zombie's. As she entered the room, the first thing that caught her eye was a memorial tablet on the table. On it was written, "Beloved wife, Hope Fairchild." Hope's pupils contracted. She had once thought that after she died, Ethan Thorne wouldn't even bother with her body, that her ashes would be mixed with dust, let alone have a memorial tablet or a gravestone. After all, Ethan Thorne's disgust for her had reached the point where he wished she would just disappear from his sight. But she never thought he would actually bring such a thing home and place it in their bedroom. Could this be one of his tricks? Hope didn't believe it. She simply pretended not to see it. She carried little Annette into the bedroom. Ethan followed behind her. Nothing in here has changed since you left. You can still live here from now on. I promise I'll be home every night. Ethan vowed solemnly. Hope flinched, saying nothing. Or rather, she didn't believe him at all. So his words went in one ear and out the other in contrast to the oppressive atmosphere. Little Annette, nestled in Hope's arms, was delighted. So Mommy's going to live here from now on. Does that mean Daddy and Mommy can be with Annette all the time? The little girl chirped happily. Hope's brow furrowed. She wanted to refuse, but she didn't dare. She was afraid that if she refused, Ethan would use the child to force her again, just like he had before. The man behind her ruffled little Annette's fluffy head and smiled. Yes, from now on, Daddy and Mommy will always be with Annette forever. The sound of the child's joyful cheers filled the air, but Hope didn't feel a shred of that joy. Ethan spoke again. Shall I show you Annette's room? Hope's eyes lit up. She was full of curiosity about this child. Whether it was where she lived or what she ate, she wanted to know everything about Annette. Ethan opened the door for them again and led the mother and daughter to little Annette's room. Just as they stepped out, a woman with a proud posture appeared in the hallway. Hope looked closer and realized it was Rosalind Fairchild. She was wearing a nightgown, looking as if she had been living in the Thorne mansion for some time. Hope, who had just managed to calm down, took one look at her and stumbled backward as if she had seen a ghost. No, I didn't kill her, I didn't kill her. Hope retreated in terror. I don't want to go to prison, I don't want to go to jail, I didn't kill her. I didn't, even though 2 years had passed, for Hope. Her memory was still stuck 2 years in the past. Her memories were filled with Rosalind's false accusations, with Ethan calling the police on her for Rosalind's sake and having her arrested, with Rosalind showing her photos of dead babies and telling her she was going to turn her baby into a human thong. Memories of him finding her with her hands around Rosalind's neck, of the concern in his eyes for Rosalind, and of him immediately sentencing her to life in prison. She had Annette now. She didn't want a life sentence, and she certainly didn't want to endure any more of the pain Ethan inflicted on her for Rosalind's sake. Wife. Ethan hadn't expected Hope to have such a strong reaction to seeing Rosalind. He had already found a house for Rosalind and told her to move out. But for the past few days, Rosalind had refused to leave and couldn't get in touch with him, so she had been waiting at the Thorne mansion for him to come back so she could plead her case. She never expected to be waiting for Hope. Ethan already knew Hope was alive. I didn't kill her. I really didn't kill her. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to go. Hope's foot slipped, and she fell to the ground. The little girl in her arms fell on top of her. Ethan quickly rushed forward, helping Annette up with one hand and reaching for Hope with the other. But the woman on the floor, who already flinched from his touch, was now even more resistant. She scrambled to her feet and fled towards the door in her panic. She even forgot to take little Annette with her. Her voice was filled with terror. I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, don't arrest me. She did it herself. She tried to kill herself. Hope. Ethan strode forward. He handed the child to a nearby servant and then caught Hope, who was trying to escape. He couldn't lose her again. He couldn't let her escape from his world again, especially with her current condition. He was terrified that Hope would try to kill herself again, just like 2 years ago. Ethan pulled Hope tightly into his arms. He comforted her gently. No one is sending you to prison. There won't be any police. None of those damn people or things, never again. I didn't kill her. Ethan, I really didn't kill her. Hope, as if transported back 2 years, clung to Ethan's sleeve and explained. Ethan, she stabbed herself. I really didn't kill her. You have to believe me. She showed me pictures of dead babies and said it was my baby. She said she was going to turn my baby into a human thong. She said she was going to make you kill me with your own hands. I didn't kill her. I really didn't kill her. Hope cried out in desperation. She was afraid of Ethan's disbelief, afraid that he would hurt her again for Rosalind's sake. She didn't want to go through that again. She was so tired. She couldn't take it anymore. All right, whatever you say, I believe you. Ethan held her, patting her back comfortingly. Hope looked at the man before her in disbelief. Did he really believe her? How could that be? Ethan Thorne had always only believed Rosalind's words. How could he believe her? This must be a trick. Him and Rosalind teaming up to torture her. Hope struggled to break free. I don't believe you. You would never believe me. You're lying to me. You don't believe me. How could you believe me? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. You must be planning to lock me in the water dungeon with her again, that must be it. I want to go back, I want to go back. With that, Hope began to run around frantically, wishing she could disappear from their sight right now. Disappear from Ethan Thorne's world forever. She didn't want to see them anymore. She didn't want to see Rosalind. And she certainly didn't want to see Ethan Thorne, wife. How could Ethan let her go? He quickly caught up and blocked her path. I believe you, I really believe you, I will never doubt you again, I swear, Ethan promised. Now, whatever Hope said, he would believe it. Ethan, Rosalind, seeing this, hurried forward. Ethan, it was little Hope who tried to kill me, you have to believe me that year. Guards, Ethan's voice boomed with rage. The bodyguards downstairs didn't dare to delay for a second and rushed upstairs. Take Rosalind Fairchild to the water dungeon, lock her up for 5 years, and then let her out. You don't need to report anything to me. Yes, young Master Thorne, 5 years. 3 of which he had spent by Rosalind's side, day and night, hurting Hope. The other 2 were the years Hope had disappeared because of it. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I was in that car accident for you. I became a vegetable for you. You can't do this to me. Hope shrank back in fear. The car accident had been deliberately arranged by Rosalind to convince Ethan not to marry her. It had just backfired and left her in a coma. She hadn't saved Ethan at all, of course. She had told Ethan all of this before, but in his eyes, Hope Fairchild was a hypocritical, vicious woman. Attempting to kill a person in a coma and then trying to frame them. He, Ethan Thorne, had never believed a single word she said. Ethan pulled Hope back into his arms, his voice gentle. I'm sorry, wife, I will never doubt you again. Forgive me. His low, soft voice murmured in her ear, tender and affectionate. A complete opposite of the man he used to be, the panic in Hope's heart still hadn't subsided. She struggled fearfully, wanting to break free, but she didn't dare to use too much force. From now on, this house will just be you, me, and Annette. Let's start over, okay? Ethan asked again. His large hand gently lifted Hope's delicate chin, making her meet his gaze. Before, he had only seen her from a distance. Now up close, he realized that in 2 years, Hope had lost a lot of weight. Even her face, which he was touching now, felt like it was just a thin layer of skin over bone. In the past, Hope would wait for Ethan to come home for dinner every night at the Thorne mansion, but what she always got was a lonely, dark night. As a result, Hope wouldn't eat at dinner time, and after waiting in vain, she would lose her appetite altogether. Day after day, she grew thinner and thinner, and now, with her depression, she was even skinnier than before. She looked as if a gust of wind could blow her over. Even Ethan's hand, resting on her waist, could feel how loose her clothes were, her waist so thin it felt like only bones remained. Wife, let's get something to eat first. Are you hungry? Ethan asked with concern as he took Hope's hand and led her towards the dining room downstairs. Hope shook her head, gently pulling her hand away from his. She didn't want to eat, and she didn't want him to hold her hand. Then let's keep Annette company while she eats, okay? It's getting late, Annette is hungry. Ethan brought up their daughter again. This time, Hope didn't refuse. She took the child back from the servant and went to the dining room. Ethan had the kitchen prepare a huge feast. The Thorne family's dining room could easily accommodate over a dozen people, with a 12-foot-long table. Now, the table was completely covered with dishes, not a single spot left. Wow, so much yummy food today, little Annette's eyes went wide. When Mommy comes back, there's so much yummy food. When Mommy isn't back, there's nothing. It wasn't just to help Hope regain her strength. He also didn't want her to get tired of just a few dishes and stop eating. So Ethan had specifically ordered a large spread. Speaking of eating, this was actually the first time she and Ethan had sat at the same table for a meal. In the past 3 years, she had never had the privilege of dining with him, only Rosalind did. But Hope's appetite didn't improve because of this. She ate awkwardly and distantly. Apart from speaking a few words while feeding little Annette, she didn't say a single word to the man sitting next to her, no matter how he tried to engage her. It was as if he wasn't even there. After being repeatedly ignored, Ethan didn't dare to get angry. He could only endure it, continuing to place food in Hope's bowl. He ended up piling 3 small mountains of food in her bowl, but he didn't see Hope take a single bite. She must still hate him. In the past, he had made this woman wait for him to come home every night, wait for him for every meal. His response was either anger or blacklisting her number. In the end, Hope could only wait in vain when she couldn't reach him. The private doctor had said she had even developed stomach problems because of it. He even remembered how dismissive he had been at the time, not even offering a single word of concern. The Hope of today, her heart, must have already turned to ice towards him. After the meal, Hope stayed by little Annette's side, even sleeping in Annette's room instead of her own. Ethan lay in the bedroom he had once shared with Hope, tossing and turning, just like every other night. Even with her back in the Thorne mansion, he still couldn't sleep. It was as if something was stranded between them, preventing them from living like a normal couple. In the middle of the night, Ethan had just gotten up to smoke a cigarette on the balcony when he heard a noise from outside the bedroom. His room was right next to little Annette's. He could hear if the door to the next room opened. He glanced at the time. It was already 2 a.m. Was Hope still awake? He had heard that people with depression were light sleepers and were easily disturbed in the middle of the night. Plus, with a little child sleeping next to her, who was always tossing and turning, she probably couldn't sleep right. Ethan stubbed out his cigarette and tiptoed to little Annette's room. He looked around but didn't see any sign of Hope. Finally, he heard the sound of sobbing from the bathroom and went inside. The bathroom light was off, but in the dim glow of the nightlight from the room, he could clearly see that Hope was self-harming. "Hope, what are you doing?" Ethan was so scared he snatched the scissors from her hand. He saw that the scissors were still stained with fresh red blood. So what Miles had said was true, she really did self-harm. "Hope, are you crazy?" Ethan pulled her to her feet, his good mood from the day completely gone at the sight. "Do you know what you're doing right now? Who gave you permission to hurt yourself like this? What are you doing with those scissors? Are you trying to do what you did 2 years ago? Are you trying to kill yourself again? Is there something I'm doing that you're not satisfied with? I can change, can't I?" His hands, gripping Hope's shoulders, were bulging with veins. His eyes were blazing with fire. He was scared that Hope would try to kill herself again, scared that this time he wouldn't be so lucky as to find her still alive. He had already experienced her leaving once, and he didn't want to go through that agony and pain again. Hope was limp like a boneless rag doll, letting him shake her. With blood flowing from her wrist and being suddenly pulled up by him, she felt a little anemic, her head spinning. Seeing the woman before him remain silent, Ethan immediately carried her back to the room and called for the private doctor. Fortunately, he had found her in time. The cut was only skin deep and hadn't damaged any tendons. After a simple cleaning and bandaging, it was done. But during the examination, Ethan discovered that her arms were covered in scars just like today's, a dense network of them. Old and new, covering both arms. He didn't know if other parts of her body were the same. Ethan was both angry and guilty. If it weren't for his repeated harm back then, the woman before him wouldn't be so covered in scars. He pulled her into his arms, his heart aching, and kissed her. "Hope, let's not do this anymore, okay? I apologize for the past. Let's start over, let's be okay, He rested his forehead against her smooth one, his eyes filled with anguish. Hope shrank back in fear. We can't go back. Since when had he realized that words could be so hurtful? In the past, Ethan Thorne had verbally attacked Hope countless times. But since they had met again, it was as if it were a debt of love, making him pay back those emotions to her, bit by bit. Hope pulled back, distancing herself from Ethan. "I'm sorry," the words on the tip of his tongue. Ethan could only manage to say this one phrase over and over. This apology felt like a debt that could never be repaid, one apology following another. Indeed, what Hope had done for him in the past, he still couldn't repay. He would probably have to spend the rest of his life making it up to her. "Wife, I'm sorry. I apologize to you. Even if you don't forgive me now, I'm not in a hurry. I will do whatever it takes to make you happy, to make you accept me. I can wait for you, for a lifetime at most." Ethan pulled her back into his arms, holding her close. He had expected Hope to resist again, but this time she just remained silent, no longer pushing him away or struggling. This small gesture made his heart beat inexplicably faster. If he tried a little harder, would Hope be willing to accept him? They didn't say any more. Late at night, after Hope had fallen asleep, Ethan quietly lay down beside her. Holding the woman in his arms, he realized that losing and then finding something makes you understand what is most precious. Downstairs, Miles's car had been parked in the Thorne family's courtyard. All day, he wanted to go in but didn't. He just wanted to know Hope's attitude towards Ethan Thorne. But in the end, the bedroom light went on, and then it went out, so Hope had made her choice. Late at night, they were the ones celebrating over there. Here, he had nothing. The next day, when Hope opened her eyes, she saw an enlarged, handsome face in front of her. She was so startled, she couldn't help but shrink back. For so many years in the past, let alone Ethan sleeping with her for a whole night, he wouldn't even stay over. And it was even more impossible for them to be like a normal couple, seeing each other the moment they opened their eyes every day. "Good morning, wife." Ethan gave her a gentle smile. Sunlight streamed into the bedroom, making his smile seem as warm as a spring breeze. Hope pressed her lips together, silent. She was still not used to their current way of getting along. Sometimes, she even felt like she was dreaming. The life she had once longed for but could never have was now actually happening to her. Ethan felt the woman in his arms flinch, and a dull ache spread through his chest. Hope's aversion to him now was probably how she had felt when he had been the same way towards her back then. Ethan pulled the woman, who was trying to move away, closer to him. He said gently, "You'll have to get used to good mornings like this from now on, because you are my wife. From now on, every day will be like this for us. We'll be the first person the other sees when we open and close our eyes." Hope was silent, still not speaking. She hadn't said much to him these past few days, but the scale in her heart was constantly wavering. She admitted she still had a little bit of longing and hope for Ethan Thorne. Otherwise, her depression wouldn't still be uncured. Ethan saw her hesitation, but just the thought of them sleeping in the same bed now made his heart race with excitement. At the very least, Hope was willing to sleep with him now. She wasn't like before, where she would be afraid and resist even a single touch. Hope avoided his intense gaze and just got up. "I'm going to wash up first. I need to check on Annette." With that, she scurried away as if someone were chasing her. After washing up, Hope went to little Annette's room. The little girl had just woken up and was calling for her and Ethan. She hadn't had a chance to think about it properly before, but now, seeing her daughter only able to sit and not walk, she was extremely anxious, afraid that this would be with her for the rest of her life. After dressing little Annette, Hope suggested, "Annette, how about Mommy takes you to the garden to learn how to walk today?" Okay, little Annette answered sweetly. This wasn't the first time she had heard this. In the past, Ethan had always patiently taught her how to walk, but because her legs were weak, she didn't have much strength. Back then, due to Hope's physical condition, they could only save either the mother or the child. A decision had to be made before the child was born. Otherwise, when it came time to give birth, the mother might not be able to be saved. But he had always known Hope's temperament. She would definitely choose to save the child. That's why Ethan had tampered with the DNA test and then forcibly harmed Hope. After the child was taken out at 6 months, he had placed her in an incubator. He had originally thought that the premature baby might not live long, but she had been healthy ever since. It was only later that he discovered little Annette's legs were weak. Ethan had never told Hope any of this. He had wanted to explain, but now, as long as Hope was here, everything was fine. Hope carried the little girl out of the room and into the garden. She placed her on the ground and held her 2 small hands, letting her try. "Annette, let's try to walk. Mommy will hold onto you and we'll walk together. Mommy takes a step and Annette takes a step, Hope took a small step with her right foot, waiting for little Annette to walk. But the little girl clung to her tightly. After taking just one small step, her whole body became unstable, and she fell to the ground. "Wah, Annette is stupid. Annette can't walk." "Wah!" The little figure on the ground immediately burst into tears, looking so pitiful it broke one's heart. Ethan rushed out and quickly scooped the fallen little girl into his arms. "Annette, don't cry. Annette isn't stupid. When Annette grows up, you'll be able to walk. Be good, don't cry, don't cry." Ethan gently wiped the tears from the child's face. He then looked at the worried Hope and said gently, "Don't be nervous. The doctor said Annette's legs just aren't as strong as a normal child's. When she gets a little older, she'll be able to walk." "Really?" A smile immediately lit up Hope's eyes. She didn't even realize that she had started to respond to Ethan's words without thinking. His words had reassured her greatly. Ethan lowered his head and deliberately pressed his face against her cheek, affectionately. "Yes, as long as we take good care of Annette and walk with her every day to exercise her legs, she'll naturally be just like any other child." As he spoke, His large hand took the opportunity to wrap around Hope's slender waist, pulling her quietly closer to him. To his surprise, Hope didn't resist. Instead, she even responded to his words. "Then we'll walk with Annette every morning from now on?" "Okay." He answered in a low voice and then gently placed a kiss on Hope's lips, deep, affectionate, and with a touch of cautiousness. "Wife, I love you, forever and ever." Perhaps this was the truest feeling after losing and then finding something again. Zurich, Miles sat in the glass house, facing the Alps. For a year, he had spent every day in the glass house he had once shared with Hope, as if only here could he find balance in his heart. At least he and Hope had a deep memory together. To cure Hope's condition, Miles had not only moved to a glass house facing the Alps, but had also spent a great deal of manpower and resources. In the end, the one who tied the bell had to be the one to untie it. The only one who could cure Hope was Ethan Thorne, and he could only guard this glass house, sitting every day in the spot Hope used to sit, looking at the scenery she used to look at from her perspective. It was only today that he realized that the direction Hope faced when she looked at the Alps was the direction of the city where Ethan Thorne was. So even when her heart was covered in scars, it had always been him, and only him, who lived there.